Our main character is a taxi driver. Her customer in the back seat is a middle-aged man who starts lecturing her about driving a taxi because she is a woman. After a while, the MC's patience wears thin. She points out how absurd it is that people look down on taxi drivers when they are simply doing their job, and then threatens him by reminding him that she is the one holding his life in her hands at that moment. The customer gets angry and threatens to sue her, but she calmly reminds him that he is smoking in the taxi, which is against the rules. Later, she feels bad about her attitude during the encounter. While looking out of the window, she notices Park Yunsu walking with a woman. The scene then cuts to the MC in a church, praying to God to punish people like the annoying customer before punishing her. She is interrupted by a lady who asks why she looks so sad. The MC replies that it's because she is praying for the sick people around her. Once again, her eyes fall on Park Yunsu, who is also attending the church. He appears to be kind, smart, sincere, and almost inhumanly perfect. Some ladies in the church are trying to set Yunsu up with a girl, but the MC interrupts and tells everyone that she saw Yunsu walking with a woman, hinting that he might already have a girlfriend. She then walks away. Yunsu seems to follow her out and asks if she is working, placing a large piece of luggage in the trunk of her taxi. While driving, the MC notices that he is blankly staring at her. He asks where she saw him earlier. She answers that she was just working nearby and asks if she took the joke too far, apologizing for it. However, Yunsu keeps pressing, asking if she remembers exactly where she saw him or the woman he was with. The look on his face frightens the MC a little, and she nervously replies that she doesn't remember her. Even then, he seems to be carefully observing her. When they finally reach his destination, she is unnerved by him. As she prepares to leave, Yunsu suddenly turns back to look at her, scaring her even more. She quickly drives away while Yunsu continues to stare at her taxi. Later, she discovers that Yunsu left his luggage in the taxi. At that exact moment, she receives a call from an unknown number, which turns out to be Park Yunsu. She asks how he got her number and if he is calling about his luggage. He interrupts her, saying that she can keep it and instructs her to open it. He adds that if she likes it, she can keep it. When the MC opens the luggage, she freezes in cold sweat and drops her phone. Inside the luggage is a dead woman. Over the phone, Yunsu chillingly says that she can bury it. We hit a flashback where we see the MC, Han Chaya, being charged with murder and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Back in the present, Chaya picks up the phone and asks Yunsu, "What's the meaning of this?" He mocks her, telling her to take a deep breath. She reminds him that taxis have dash cams and that everything is recorded, but Yunsu casually tells her to report him then, adding that she won't because she's an ex-convict. Chaya is terrified. Even a woman passing by seems suspicious to her. She tells Yunsu to come and take his luggage, but he refuses. Trying to calm herself down, she checks the dashcam footage, only to be shocked to see that she is alone in the recording. She realizes that, unlike a mouse being chased by its predator, she has no one to fight. In fact, she doesn't even know what she's up against. Desperate, she decides to bury the body herself. As she starts digging a grave, she tells herself not to cry or think about it. Over and over she repeats, "I'm sorry," while digging. Suddenly, she hears the sound of snapping and turns to see Yunsu taking pictures of her. With a smile, he says, "I have found your weakness now." He mockingly says that he thought Chaya was a soft, kind-hearted person, but here she is, burying a corpse with her bare hands. Furious, she kicks his phone and tries to grab it, but Yunsu trips her. As she struggles on the ground, an invisible force seems to paralyze her, stopping her from moving. Yunsu calmly walks toward the phone and says, "Humans always manage to make me angry without realizing who I am." He picks up the phone and tells her that if she doesn't want to go to jail, she must bring one person per week to his place. With a flick of his finger, he makes her head nod in agreement, as though she is under his control. In that moment, she notices his eyes turn yellow. Chaya wakes up in her house, disoriented. It's been 6 days since the incident, and she has neither fulfilled Yunsu's demand nor reported him to the authorities. Her deadline is rapidly approaching, and she is consumed by fear and indecision. She wonders what will happen to her now, and contemplates whether she should comply with his demand. However, she stops herself, determined not to give in. As she reflects on why these terrible things keep happening to her, a drunk man suddenly stumbles into her taxi and coincidentally asks to be taken to the same address Yunsu had given her. Chea's mind goes numb and she begins driving in a blank, detached state. Terrified, she keeps telling herself that this is just a coincidence, that she isn't doing what Yunsu asked and that she isn't going to inform him. Upon reaching the destination, she turns to tell the customer they've arrived, only to find the back seat empty. There's no one in the taxi. At home, Chaya checks the dash cam and discovers that the man vanished into thin air just before she turned her head. She feels like she's losing her mind. The next day, when she goes to church, she considers running away, but ends up running into Yunsu, who is with a little boy. He still seems to be keeping an eye on her. The boy with Yunsu is named Gurim. He attends Mass with Yunsu every week, but was absent last week due to being sick. As Chaya watches them, she wonders if Gurim has any idea about what's really going on, or if he, too, is being manipulated by Yunsu. The boy approaches her and sits next to her. While she is still observing him, he suddenly smiles. Chaya is overwhelmed by fear again as Gurim hands her a slip of paper and says, "I'm looking forward to working with you." She thinks, "Again?" and immediately asks Gurim who gave him the note. He replies cryptically, telling her that she already knows who, and warns her to stay quiet. Outside, Chaya confronts Yunsu, calling out how messed up the entire situation is. She throws the slip in his face and demands to know if he has something against her. She declares that she's not going to mindlessly obey his commands like an idiot, adding that her shitty personality means she'd rather report him than comply. Yunsu only smiles and, to her shock, says she did a good job last night. Chaya retorts that the customer just happened to request the same address by coincidence. Yunsu, however, begins to gaslight her, asking if she's sure the customer's home was actually in that direction. Furious, Chaya demands to know what he did to the customer. She threatens to expose him to everyone if he doesn't tell her. Yunsu simply laughs in response. Growing angrier, she repeats her demand, but Gurim interrupts by bursting into tears, saying he wants to play with Chaya. This distraction shifts the focus, and Yunsu and Gurim begin to leave. As they walk away, Yunsu quietly tells her good luck while handing her another address. Now Chaya becomes determined to uncover who they really are and what is going on. She decides to follow them and sees that they arrive at a children's center. Yunsu and Gurim go inside. While she is still in her car, a lady knocks on her window and asks if she is the volunteer Yunsu mentioned. Chaya immediately realizes that Yunsu knew she was following them all along. Frustrated, she thinks to herself that she is not a simple toy he can play with as he pleases. Chaya asks the lady if she can work with Yunsu since she is new here. However, the lady refuses, explaining that children easily form attachments and feel hurt when people leave. She adds that Yunsu is like an angel on earth. Chaya is instead assigned to kitchen duty. While washing dishes, she finds herself questioning what the hell she is even doing there. As she works, Yunsu comes into the kitchen with a little girl and asks for a cup. When Chaya goes to hand them the cup, it slips from her fingers and breaks, cutting her hand on the shattered glass. Annoyed and in pain, she tells them to leave, but as she looks up, she notices Yunsu staring at her with a chilling expression of anger. He walked toward her and grabbed her hand. Chaya froze as he stared at her with a wild, almost crazed expression. Suddenly, the little girl started crying, snapping him out of whatever had taken hold of him. He angrily jerked Chaya's hand away and stormed out of the room. Chaya took a moment to collect herself and decided to follow him again, but this time she lost track of his car. Back at home, she sat and thought, trying to figure out what could have made Yunsu so furious. Then she remembered the cut on her finger. A disturbing thought crossed her mind, and she whispered to herself, "No way this is possible." Determined to find answers, she searched the web and stumbled upon a blog post that caught her attention. Intrigued, she decided to join the blog. Soon after, the manager of the blog sent her an invitation along with an unexpected offer: the chance to become a vampire. The manager explains that to join, Chaya needs to perform a blood ritual, which involves writing with her own blood. She initially dismisses it as ridiculous, but becomes intrigued by the mention of yellow eyes, which matches what she has seen. Curiosity gets the better of her, so she decides to go through with the ritual, using ketchup instead of blood. The ritual requires her to write, I, Han Chaya, will be a loyal servant to the great vampire. Annoyed, she can't help but picture Yunsu's face as she writes it, making the process even more irritating. The blog post lists several traits of vampires. They cannot be in direct sunlight, they can render you immobile, they have a bite mark, and their yellow eyes are always watching you. Chaya rolls her eyes, dismissing it all as nonsense pulled straight from a vampire movie. She leaves for work, still thinking the whole thing is absurd. However, as she goes about her day, we see someone with yellow eyes watching her from afar. Chaya begins to see Yunsu everywhere. Even when she looks back at her customers, she sees his face instead. Shocked and disturbed, she abruptly stops the taxi, causing the lady in the back seat to leave. As she tries to collect herself, she spots Yunsu again outside. Panicking, she drives away as fast as she can. Shortly after, a man gets into her taxi. He starts babbling about how he hit someone while drunk driving, his incessant chatter grating on Chaya's nerves. When he asks if he can smoke in the taxi, she firmly says no. The man becomes angry and demands that she stop the taxi immediately. He stepped out of the taxi and angrily demanded that Chaya get out as well. Panicked, she tried to drive away, but the man quickly got back inside, threatening her by saying he wasn't joking about hitting people. When Chaya lost her temper and yelled back at him, he demanded an apology. Trying to stay calm, she apologized, but the man continued to curse at her. Frustrated, she told him to get out of the taxi and threatened to call the police. This only enraged him further, and he started pounding on the back of her seat. The violent shaking made the car feel dangerously unstable, but the man wouldn't stop, yelling that if she stopped driving, he would hurt her. Completely unsure of what to do, Chaya's eyes caught a sign for Sapumnaru, and she decided to head there. She drove with a blank expression, the weight of the situation overwhelming her, as the address happened to be the same one Yunsu had given her. When she finally slammed on the brakes, her heart sank. Yunsu was standing right in front of the taxi, smiling. The man in the taxi disappeared, leaving Han Chaya in shock at what she had just done. She saw Yunsu mouthing the words, "You did a great job," which only deepened her shame. As she hurriedly tried to leave, Yunsu began clapping for her, his mock applause making her feel even worse. Suddenly, he appeared in the back seat of the taxi, startling her as he asked why she was ignoring him. Chaya kept telling herself that he wasn't real, trying desperately to cling to the hope that this was all in her head. But Yunsu taunted her, criticizing her driving and suggesting that she give up being a taxi driver and work for him instead. The eerie reality of his presence forced her to admit that he was, in fact, real. Yunsu once again complimented her for a good job and then asked how she felt. His condescending tone and laughter only fueled her anger, but he seemed to enjoy her frustration. Before leaving, Yunsu warned her, saying, "I'm letting you off this time, but don't ever use me again. I don't need that many." The realization of what he meant hit Chea like a ton of bricks, making it hard for her to breathe as the horrifying truth set in. She couldn't get any of it out of her mind, her thoughts spiraling out of control. At home, she was startled by the sound of a car pulling up outside her house. Her fear reached a new height as she heard a knock at her door, followed by a voice saying, "It's me." Chea opens the door and is slightly surprised to see her sister, Chasen, standing there. They sit together awkwardly as Chasen asks how she's been. Chea, feeling nervous, replies that she's doing well. Chasen then hands her a wedding invitation. Chea is shocked to see that the wedding is only a few days away, but congratulates her sister nonetheless. As Chea gets up to bring some drinks, she stumbles and falls from exhaustion. This prompts Chasen to ask, "Nothing happened, right?" The question stings, reminding Chea that her sister still doesn't truly care about her. Chasen mentions that if Chea has done something wrong again, their uncle might face trouble, which enrages Chea. Chea confronts her sister, accusing her of not visiting when she was released from prison and only coming now to check if she had messed up again. With tears streaming down her face, Chea reminds her sister that it was their family who cut her out first. She demands that Chasen leave, adding bitterly that she'll think about attending the wedding. Chasen apologizes and leaves, but Chea immediately regrets her harsh words. A flashback shows young Chea and Chasen crying at their parents' funeral. The two sisters are told they'll be living with their grandmother, a woman they're meeting for the first time. However, their grandmother's first reaction is one of disappointment, as she remarks about the burden of having to take in two children. Young Chea is sick with a fever, and we see their grandmother complaining about how hard it is to take care of two children, remarking that at least Chasen is mature. Despite her illness, little Chea is seen folding her bedding when her grandmother asks if she's okay. Not wanting to be a burden, Chea lies and says she's fine, but her grandmother accuses her of pretending to be sick for attention. Later, their uncle arrives, but only takes Chasen to the amusement park, leaving Chea behind. When Chasen gives Chea her candy as a small consolation, their grandmother accuses Chea of stealing it, calling her greedy. Chasen, standing silently, doesn't correct her grandmother or defend Chea. In the present, Chea is seen crying in her sleep, murmuring softly, "I also want the big candy." At Park Yunsu's house, Gurim is seen cooking meat. He casually mentions that there's too much food downstairs and remarks that he has found himself the perfect toy. Yunsu comments that she's quite interesting. Gurim warns that if you play with a toy too much, it might break. Yunsu, however, seems thrilled at the thought of seeing her at the church again, eager to witness her dumbfounded and terrified expression when she notices him. Contrary to his expectations, when Chea sees him at the church, she gives no reaction at all. Undeterred, Yunsu hands her another slip, implying she knows what to do. But this time, Chea fearlessly responds, stating that she's not doing this anymore. Yunsu asks if she's hurt her head or if she's scared. Chea replies that she's tired and doesn't want to live this way anymore. She calls the police station and hands the phone to Yunsu, telling him he can report her if he wants. However, Yunsu doesn't make the call. Instead, he says that he could hurt her, to which she responds by daring him to go ahead, adding that she came prepared. Yunsu asks again if she's truly fine with it, then suddenly teleports them to a different place. He points out how insane she is and tells her to just do as he says. When he comes close to her, she grabs a piece of glass and attacks him. He manages to catch her hand, but she bursts into tears, begging him to stop because she's tired of everything. Chea notices in shock that the cut she inflicted on him heals instantly, and his eyes turn yellow. Terrified, she steps back, asking him who he really is. When Yunsu hears the word vampire leave her mouth, a small smile forms on his face. He then throws her into the air, making her float helplessly. "You don't need to know," he says coldly, "because you won't be with us much longer." Yunsu tells her to apologize, promising to let her go if she does. However, Chea refuses and defiantly tells him to continue. We are then taken to a flashback of a young Yunsu pleading with a blonde man to turn him into a vampire, but the man refuses. Yunsu's persistence angers the blonde man, who uses his powers to make Yunsu float in the air. A woman rushes in, begging the blonde man to spare Yunsu. She urges Yunsu to apologize, but he stubbornly thinks to himself that he will never apologize to that monster. In the present, hearing Hanchea repeat the same defiant words he once said strikes a chord in Yunsu, and he lets her go. He leaves her lying on the ground, her defiance lingering in his mind. Chea believes it is finally over and that she will never see him again. To her relief, her life seems to return to normal. In the next scene, Chea is shown nervously walking to her sister's wedding. As she approaches the venue, she is confronted by her grandmother, who angrily demands to know why she has come. Chea, without much enthusiasm, greets her grandmother with a simple, "Long time no see," but her grandmother quickly drags her aside. She begins accusing Chea of trying to ruin the wedding and being jealous of her sister, not giving her a chance to explain. Chea thinks to herself that it's not worth arguing on a day like this and mockingly agrees with everything her grandmother says. She calmly explains that she'll just be quick and that she has an invitation. But her grandmother, in an attempt to stop her, grabs her arm and accidentally rips her blazer. Now, everyone's attention in the room is on them. Outside, we see a handsome, well-dressed man about to enter the venue. Back inside, a curious guest asks who Chaya is. To Chaya's shock and heartbreak, Chasen, her sister, responds that she's not sure. This response devastates Chaya, who realizes she was never truly meant to come. It was all an act. Feeling betrayed and out of place, Chaya gives her sister a brief, sorrowful look and turns to leave. Just as she is about to walk out, the man from outside enters. It's Park Yunsu, and he's looking for Chaya. Yunsu begins acting as though he and Chaya are close, leaving her utterly confused. Noticing her ripped blazer, he takes off his coat and drapes it over her shoulders. He greets her grandmother politely before walking over to Chasen, all the while holding Chaya's hand firmly. This interaction quickly makes it clear to everyone that Chaya and Chasen are sisters. Chasen, visibly surprised, asks how Chaya and Yunsu know each other. Yunsu is about to reply that they're best friends, but Chaya interrupts, boldly claiming that they're dating. Yunsu simply smiles and goes along with her story, agreeing to everything she says. Next, they greet Chaya's uncle. Chaya feels disgusted by her uncle's fake concern for her, as though he genuinely cared. When the time comes, she asks Yunsu to give congratulatory money, and he obliges, pulling out an enormous sum. Once again, Chaya feels repulsed by how quickly their attitudes change because Yunsu is with her. Frustrated, she tries to leave, but she notices Yunsu silently counting her family members with a smile on his face. She suddenly feels trapped, realizing her situation hasn't changed at all. Yunsu jokes that he'd like to get to know her family better, but Chaya grabs his arm and drags him outside. Once they're alone, Yunsu continues to play his friendly, easygoing character, but Chaya angrily confronts him, demanding to know what he wants with her family. Smirking, Yunsu points out that Chasen doesn't seem as resilient as Chaya and assures her that the same thing wouldn't happen to her sister. He then pulls out a paper slip and calmly states that everything will be fine, but only if Chaya does her job correctly. Chaya reaches out to the manager of the blog post and tells him that she knows someone with yellow eyes who has been keeping an eye on her. She asks if there is a way to escape from the vampire, but he insists that he needs proof first. Frustrated, she leaves, wondering what might happen if she brought the man to Yunsu. She starts to feel like she's acting like a real criminal in this situation. Chaya decides that if a customer doesn't show up within 30 minutes, she'll just leave. However, to her shock, a woman arrives, requesting to go to the exact address Yunsu had given her. Unbeknownst to her, the manager is trailing her taxi, determined to catch a glimpse of the vampire. Chaya doubts herself, questioning whether she can really go through with it. She thinks, others are better than my own family, and is immediately shocked by her own thoughts. Trying to block them out, she focuses on driving. When the sweet lady in the back seat offers Chaya some bread her daughter made, Chaya suddenly stops the car and angrily asks the woman to get out. The lady starts lecturing her, pointing out that Chaya could be her daughter's age. Seeing that there is only one road now, she had to go to that place. Upon reaching the address, Chaya feels like a monster for what she has done. But her thoughts are interrupted by the voice of the lady who is still sitting in the back seat. Shocked, Chaya wonders why Yunsu didn't take the woman, or if she had somehow made a mistake. The possibility frightens her, leaving her overwhelmed with anxiety. Meanwhile, the manager, trailing behind them, is intrigued by Chaya's conflicted expressions. She feels relieved that the woman didn't disappear and wonders if there's a deeper reason behind it, as Yunsu never makes mistakes. While pondering this, she also notices the car that has been following her. Inside the church, Gurim hands her another slip, but this time she asks to see Yunsu. Gurim dismisses her request, telling her to just do as instructed and get rid of the car tailing her. This makes her realize that the car following her must be the reason Yunsu didn't take the woman. After the mass ends, a group of women approaches Yunsu, inviting him for coffee. Chaya decides to join as well. Yunsu remarks that it'll be entertaining, though Gurim chooses to leave. Chaya steps outside and confronts the manager, who is still following her. She tells him that she already knew he was trailing her and assures him that it's fine to keep doing so. Adding, she promises to show him something interesting, the vampire. At the cafe, the ladies ask if they are interrupting something between Chaya and Yunsu. Chaya casually replies that she needs to stay with them to feel safe. Smiling, Yunsu teasingly asks what else she thinks he might be trying to do. This sparks the ladies' curiosity, and they ask if something is going on between the two. Yunsu answers with a grin, explaining that Chaya is working for him and adding that she's good at her job. Chaya excuses herself from the table to bring coffee. As she walks away, she realizes something important. Yunsu doesn't act recklessly when others are watching, likely because he doesn't want to be discovered. This gives her an idea. If Yunsu wants to maintain his human facade and live quietly among humans, she'll expose him in front of everyone, ensuring he won't come near her again. Returning to the table, she intentionally drops one of the coffee cups and cuts her hand on the shards. Blood trickles from the wound, and Yunsu's yellow eyes flash in response. Suddenly, Chaya finds herself surrounded by roses, their intoxicating fragrance clouding her mind and making her forget her plan. From outside, the manager observes the scene and notices something strange. Everyone in the cafe appears frozen, except for Yunsu. Yunsu leans in, his fangs bared as if he's about to bite Chaya, but he abruptly stops when the sound of a camera shutter breaks the silence. Yunsu steps back, his face dark with fury, and glares at Chaya. This was some kind of funny joke. Yunsu storms out of the cafe in a fury. Chaya approaches the manager to see if he managed to capture any pictures, but the camera revealed nothing. She advises him to stop searching for vampires and instead focus on running far away. Meanwhile, Yunsu rushes home and orders Gurim to burn his blood-stained shirt. He angrily declares that a line has been crossed and vows to play some serious pranks, muttering under his breath that a joke should only be treated as a joke. Heading downstairs to where the bodies are kept, he contemplates what Chaya has done, and the more he dwells on it, the stronger his desire becomes to punish her. A truck driver encounters a coffin in the middle of the road. Later, the news reports that inside the coffin was the body of a 40-year-old man who had gone missing. Chaya fears that it might be the same man she had driven to Yunsu. At a nearby counter, two men discuss the incident, speculating that it could be the work of some taxi driver, which frightens her even more. When Chaya arrives home, she searches for information about the incident and confirms her worst fear. It was indeed the same man. Realizing that this is Yunsu's revenge for what happened the previous day, she curses him. Despair washes over her as she acknowledges that, in the end, she will be the one caught, not Yunsu, since she is the one traceable. Then she remembers something, a button from his shirt that had been ripped off in the cafe. It is the only trace of Park Yunsu. Determined, Chaya reminds herself that if there's one thing she's good at, it's surviving. She resolves to make him fall using the very leash he has bound her with. We see Chaya digging up the grave of the girl Yunsu had forced her to bury, placing the button on the body as evidence. She prays that this small button might become a fatal blow to Yunsu. Leaving the suitcase with the body by the side of the road, the suitcase also makes it to the news, but to Chaya's surprise, no one mentions the button. Meanwhile, Yunsu remains unfazed by the reports, remarking that he had thought she was smarter than this. He briefly considers releasing incriminating pictures of her, but decides against it, relishing her suffering instead. Gurim, growing increasingly frustrated, yells at Yunsu, accusing him of advertising their existence and demanding that he stop this madness. Yunsu, calm and collected, reassures Gurim that he has not made any mistakes. Suddenly, Yunsu's phone rings. He answers it, but his composed demeanor falters at the voice on the other end. The caller asks, "What are you doing?" Yunsu addresses the man as "father," his expression visibly strained as he speaks. The man accuses Yunsu of engaging in foolishness again, comparing it to the events from 30 years ago. He informs Yunsu that the button from his shirt was found with the body, questioning if Yunsu is attempting to expose their kind to the world. On the other side of the phone is a blonde man. He explains that for 1,000 years, their kind has remained hidden due to strict discipline, and he accuses Yunsu of acting recklessly and irrationally. The man pointedly asks if Yunsu is causing trouble on purpose. Yunsu, with a nonchalant tone, responds, "Who knows?" but assures him that he will handle these two cases. The man firmly reminds Yunsu that hunting is prohibited and advises him to embrace a normal life, adding that the incident from 30 years ago was more than enough. Then, with a mocking tone, the man taunts Yunsu, asking if he has forgotten his friend who passed away. Yunsu snaps and angrily tells him to stop, but the man continues, slyly asking, "Did he hear?" implying Gurim might have overheard. For the first time, Yunsu appears genuinely frightened. The man presses further, stating that he knows exactly what Yunsu is hiding. This time, Yunsu pleads with him to stop, and they hang up. As Yunsu reflects on the conversation, he realizes that Han Chea must be behind this chaos, thinking to himself that she is far smarter than he initially believed. Turning to Gurim, Yunsu informs him that hunting is forbidden and instructs him to deal with Chea, all while the tension between them grows as they subtly keep an eye on one another. The narrative then shifts to a flashback from 30 years ago. A man named Sion is seen knocking on Yunsu's door, holding his young son, Gurim, in his arms. Yunsu asks Son what he means by a kid, and whether it refers to the woman they met 10 years ago. Son looks at him with a sorrowful expression but says nothing. Yunsu then notices that Son is wearing his clothes and demands an explanation, but Son remains silent. In the present, Chea goes into hiding, but the manager finds her. She decides to tell him everything. The manager then reveals that he also has a button with the same unique pattern. Chea, surprised, remarks that she couldn't find the brand anywhere and asks how he came to possess one. The manager explains that 30 years ago, when he was a child, he witnessed a horrifying scene. One night, he saw a man draining the blood from his friend's mother as she screamed for help. During the commotion, the man dropped the button. The next day, his friend's entire family disappeared without a trace. Realizing that the buttons are identical, the manager concludes that the man he saw must be Park Yunsu. Nearby, Gurim overhears the conversation and his face fills with shock as he mutters, "Yunsu, and my mother?" Chea suggests to the manager that they should hide somewhere for the time being. While planning their next move, she receives a message from an unknown sender claiming to know something about Yunsu and asking to meet. Assuming it can't be Park Yunsu himself, she decides to go and meet the sender. To her surprise, it turns out to be Gurim. When she asks how he knew it was her ID, he replies that she was foolish enough to use her real name on the note. Chea wonders why he called her, pointing out that he and Yunsu are on the same side. Gurim quickly denies being aligned with Yunsu, telling her not to lump them together and asserting that he wants to help her. Chea is skeptical of his motives. Gurim explains that the button is significant because it bears Yunsu's mark, the wolf symbol, and adds that Yunsu is unable to take action right now due to the incident. He pulls out a paper slip, but this time, the address listed is Yunsu's house. Gurim tells her that if anyone can put an end to Yunsu, it might be her. Chea hesitates and asks if Gurim is also a vampire and how one could even defeat such a creature. Instead of answering, Gurim walks away. When Gurim arrives home, he finds that Yunsu is not there. A note left behind states that Yunsu has gone on a trip and will return when he feels hungry. We see Yunsu on vacation, reflecting on how the world around him keeps changing while he remains the same. He finds this unchanging nature of his existence deeply annoying. Back in Korea, Chea arrives at Yunsu's house. The gate to the mansion opens on its own, and she thinks to herself that someone who lives in such a creepy house must naturally have a personality like his. Gurim opens the gate for her, asking why she's late. Chea questions why he can't simply end Yunsu himself. Gurim responds with a vague, "I just can't," which leaves her baffled. Annoyed, she asks if he at least knows how to do it. Gurim admits he doesn't, frustrating her even more. However, he mentions that he once saw Yunsu kill another vampire, but doesn't remember much about how it happened. He suggests they might find some clues in the house. They make their way to Yunsu's study. Chea speculates that since no one is allowed inside the study and Yunsu is too arrogant to hide anything in overly complicated spots, they should check simple places first. As expected, she finds a silver cup tucked away in one of his drawers. Gurim exclaims, "This is it!" But before they can react further, they are startled by Yunsu's voice. "I didn't know we had guests." Park Yunsu was back, and his piercing gaze fell on the two intruders as he calmly asked what they were doing. Chea begins to wonder if Yunsu and Gurim had planned this whole situation together. Yunsu remarks that they look like they just got caught stealing something, casually taking the silver cup from Chea's hand. The tension in the room is palpable. With a smile, Yunsu says it's been a while since they've had guests and offers to cook her a meal. Chea refuses, but he insists. When Gurim tries to intervene, Yunsu cuts him off with a stern look, declaring that Chea will stay for the meal. As they move to the kitchen, Yunsu asks Chea how she finds the house. She replies that it feels lifeless, to which he nonchalantly responds, "That's the point." Once in the kitchen, he turns to Gurim and asks if there's any meat left or if he should go catch some. Gurim, uneasy, wonders what kind of twisted joke Yunsu is trying to play this time, while Chea grows increasingly terrified at the thought of what meat he might mean. Eventually, Yunsu smilingly serves the food and encourages Chea to eat. When she hesitantly asks why he isn't eating, he calmly responds, "Don't worry, I eat everything you bring me." To add to her unease, he pours her a glass of red wine. Chea refuses, but he assures her it isn't alcohol. He taunts her, saying that if she drinks it all, he'll let her leave quietly. Terrified, Chea drinks the wine in one gulp, only to realize it was just juice. Furious, she curses him under her breath as she storms out. Yunsu merely laughs at her reaction. Once Chea is gone, Gurim confronts Yunsu, asking why he returned earlier than expected. Yunsu replies that he was bored. Then his tone shifts as he coldly asks Gurim what they were doing in his study. Gurim looks deeply hurt as he stares at Yunsu and hesitantly asks if he ended his father using that silver cup. Yunsu, taken aback, asks Gurim what he's talking about, but Gurim presses on, saying he remembers it now, seeing his father's body and Yunsu standing over it with a smile. Surprised, Yunsu hesitantly asks, "You saw that?" This revelation causes Gurim to break down in tears. He yells at Yunsu, begging him to make an excuse or say something to convince him that his memories are wrong. Yunsu stands silent, realizing he can't deny what happened. After a moment, he simply responds, "Yes." Gurim, devastated, runs out of the room. Yunsu is left standing there, sadness washing over him as he reflects on the truth that Gurim had known all along and kept it buried for 30 years. In his memories, Yunsu recalls that it was Sion himself who had begged Yunsu to end his life. Meanwhile, still crying, admits to himself that he always knew the truth but had desperately hoped he was wrong. He laments that Park Yunsu was all he had, but now he can no longer live with him. Outside, the manager waits near the house and sees Chea emerge first, followed shortly by Gurim. The manager feels a flicker of recognition when he sees Gurim's face, but before he can fully process it, Gurim suddenly vanishes into thin air. Shocked, the manager starts to suspect Han Chea, wondering how she's connected to these strange events. The manager hires a detective, and through their investigation, it's revealed that Chea was imprisoned for 5 years for attempted murder after threatening her ex-boyfriend with a knife. Meanwhile, Chea returns to her home, thinking that if Yunsu is not allowed to hunt, she is safe for the time being. However, upon opening the door, she finds Gurim already inside. He casually tells her that he'll be staying there for a while, as he's had a fight with Yunsu. He adds that while he's there, she can ask him anything she wants to know about Yunsu. Over the next week, Chea bombards Gurim with so many questions about Yunsu that she's left with only trivial ones, like his height, weight, and even where his moles are. Finally, she asks why Yunsu is so obsessed with her. Gurim suggests that it might be because she didn't run away. Everyone else before her either fled in fear or lost their sanity. Chea comments bitterly that there's no way to escape someone like Yunsu. Later, as they eat ramen together, she asks Gurim if he can survive on just ramen, considering he's also a vampire. Gurim replies that he's fine. From a distance, the manager, who has been keeping an eye on them, watches the interaction and becomes convinced that Chea has fooled him and is also a vampire. Determined to act, he decides to burn down Yunsu's mansion. As Chea and Gurim continue talking, she asks if Yunsu, unable to hunt for a month, wouldn't eventually starve to death. Gurim explains that vampires have emergency food stored for such situations. Meanwhile, the manager sneaks into Yunsu's mansion, preparing to carry out his plan. Unbeknownst to him, a shadowy figure silently watches his every move. As the manager is about to set the mansion on fire, someone knocks him out. He himself as a child, talking to Gurim, whom he calls Han-seok, saying that Han-seok appears in his dreams. It's revealed that the manager is confined in a dimly lit cell. Outside the cell, Gurim stands watching him and asks if he remembers what happened that night. The manager admits that it was too dark for him to confirm the man's identity. Desperate, the manager asks if Gurim is also a vampire and pleads with him to turn him into one. Gurim walks away, saying he doesn't want to hear his old name, let alone remember it. Left alone, the manager begins to hallucinate, imagining that the other people in the cell are trying to attack him. In a panic, he lashes out at them, but in reality, they are just sitting there unconscious. Meanwhile, Park Yunsu, resting upstairs, wakes abruptly, disturbed by the strong scent of blood wafting up from the cell below. Yunsu realizes he has been asleep for a week and is now at his limit. He mutters to himself that it would be ironic if a vampire died of hunger. A foul, rotten smell like decaying corpses catches his attention, and he heads downstairs, desperate for relief. To his horror, he finds that everyone in the cell has died. Meanwhile, outside, the mansion is engulfed in flames. The manager, having escaped, hails a ride from Chaya. However, once inside the car, he starts attacking her, accusing her of deceiving him. In the struggle, he accidentally hits his head against the car interior, knocking himself out. Chaya, left bewildered and shaken, wonders what to do with him. Back at the mansion, Yunsu stumbles out of the burning house. Weak from hunger, he can barely distinguish reality from a dream. He laments that he can't drink from corpses and must hunt, but his body gives out and he collapses just outside the main gate. Standing before him is Han Chaya, who takes in the situation with a smirk. Assessing his frail condition, she remarks with mock cheerfulness, "Looks like you could use some help, Park Yunsu." He admits that he does. Chaya steps on his hand, saying that he really can't move. Yunsu comments that she looks really pleased right now. They are interrupted by a noise coming from her car, and Yunsu says, "Seems like you also have a problem. How about we help each other out? You and me, the best way." Chaya asks what she will get from helping him. He replies, "Your freedom. If you help me, I'll let you go." Chaya adds, "Besides my freedom, I also want you to guarantee my life." Thinking she is smart, he agrees. She brings the manager out of the taxi, but Yunsu tells her he needs a little more help. "I need flowing blood," he says. She complies with his request. Yunsu suddenly stands up and attacks the manager. After he's done, he steps toward Chaya. He tells her not to worry and promises to keep his word, on one condition. Chaya must attend Mass every Sunday because he needs to monitor what she might say to others. She asks again, confirming, "If I comply with this, will you really leave me alone?" The moment Yunsu says yes, she gives him a tight slap and says, "Now I'm done." She curses him, saying she doesn't even want to talk about him or think about him anymore. "Let's live our own lives," she declares, walking away as Yunsu stands there silently. In the car, tears stream down her cheeks as she whispers to herself, "I survived." Chaya is enjoying her newfound freedom, relishing the peaceful life without anyone threatening her. However, Gurim is still around, much to her dismay. She tells him to go back to Yunsu, but he firmly replies that he doesn't want to be associated with Yunsu anymore. He offers to cover the costs for the taxi repair and rent, using Yunsu's money, of course, and declares that he will be staying. Chaya, resigned, takes a swig of her beer and instantly gets drunk. In her intoxicated state, she suddenly asks Gurim if he is Yunsu's son. Shocked, he replies, "Of course not." She laughs, saying he looks like Yunsu, especially with that stupid gaze of his. Realizing she might have hurt him, she apologizes, remembering how much he also dislikes Yunsu. Chaya then asks if he has ever hit Yunsu, bragging that she did, leaving Gurim completely stunned. Proudly, she declares, "You're in big trouble if you mess with Han Chaya," while basking in her peaceful life. On Sunday, as part of her agreement, Chaya reluctantly goes to church. Her eyes meet Yunsu's, and she thinks that simply showing her face and leaving should be enough to fulfill her side of the deal. Suddenly, a woman approaches her and asks if she is currently seeing anyone. Before Chaya can respond, the woman mentions wanting to introduce her friend's son. Without waiting for Chea's answer, the woman calls over a man named Haewon. The moment Chea sees him, her face freezes in shock. It seems like Chea and Haewon already know each other. When Chea tries to leave, saying she is busy, Haewon insists they at least have coffee together since he took the time to meet her. Reluctantly, Chea agrees. At the cafe, the lady asks how they know each other, and Haewon explains that they worked as part-timers at a cafe. The lady then asks how long it has been since they last met, and Haewon replies, 7 years. Chea looks saddened, silently reflecting on the fact that it has indeed been 7 years. As they leave, the lady insists they ride together. Alone in the car, Chea wonders to herself what Haewon is even thinking. With a straight and slightly intimidating expression, Haewon asks her how she's been, adding that he hadn't heard from her at all. Chea brushes off his question and tells him to just drop her off. When he asks where she lives, she vaguely replies, nearby. As she gets out of the car, Haewon suddenly leans in, holds her cheek, and says that he misses her. Startled for a moment, Chea regains her composure and firmly tells him to stop. Meanwhile, outside, Gurim and Yunsu are bickering as usual. In an unexpected turn of events, both groups cross paths. Gurim quickly grabs Chea's arm, asking where she's been and why she's late. He then complains that some weirdo, meaning Park Yunsu, is bugging him. When Haewon asks if she knows them, Gurim notices him and loudly asks if he's her boyfriend. To tease her even more, Gurim adds, "Or are you breaking up with Uncle again?" referring to Yunsu. Frustrated, Chea tells Gurim to go back to Yunsu, but he nonchalantly replies, "I'll go with you." Fed up, she grabs his hand and walks away. Before leaving, she turns to both Yunsu and Haewon, telling them to never meet her again. As she walks away, she thinks to herself about how twisted her life has become. Yunsu is about to leave as well, but Haewon stops him, asking how long he's been dating Chea. Without giving Yunsu a chance to answer, Haewon bombards him with questions, one after another. Irritated, Yunsu jerks him away. "How far, you ask?" he repeats, a smirk forming on his face. "What if we're even thinking of marriage?" To escalate the tension, he adds, "Right now, things are complicated, but personality-wise, we're perfect for each other, and who knows, in the future we might actually get married." To make matters worse, Yunsu adds, "Chea feels the same way." Leaning in closer to Haewon, he can remark, "The only one who can accept her as she is me." Smiling, he leaves without another word. Later at Chea's house, Gurim notices she looks unwell and asks if she's okay. She admits, "Haewon is my ex-boyfriend." In a flashback, we see little Chea being complimented by her teacher for her writing skills. The teacher suggests that she start writing a diary for herself. Excited by the praise, Chea rushes home to share the news with her grandmother. However, her grandmother, who was drunk and crying, angrily asked why Chea had come to her house. The grandmother despised Chea because she resembled her mother, a woman the grandmother strongly disliked. That day, Chea cried a lot, wishing she could be seen for who she was, not as a reflection of her mother. Unfortunately, the discrimination persisted. As she grew older, she managed to save some money and told her family that she planned to leave the house after graduating. When her sister came to talk to her, Chea reminded her of the unfair treatment she had endured in the household and expressed her determination to leave. Eventually, Chea moved out. While working part-time at a cafe, she met Nam Haewon for the first time. At that moment, she believed he was her savior. At first, Chea thought her feelings for Haewon were a one-sided crush. However, when she realized that he felt the same way, it made her incredibly happy. Whenever a customer at the cafe tried to approach her, Haewon would step in, saying he was jealous, which made her feel special. She felt like he was pulling her out of her bleak, muddy life. But slowly things began to change. Haewon started getting angry over the smallest interactions she had with other men. Once, he even slapped her. In that moment, he didn't seem human at all. He told her he didn't like her talking to other guys because that's how much he loved her. Chea began gaslighting herself into believing his words, convincing herself that he must be right. She thought back to how her grandmother never hit her, and because of that, never loved her. She started blaming herself. A conflict began brewing within her thoughts. She questioned if this situation was really okay and eventually stopped responding to Haewon's messages. Around this time, her sister Chasen came to visit her at her new house. However, Chea wasn't home. While waiting, Chasen's eyes fell on Chea's diary, and she decided to read it. In the diary, Chea had written about how much she hated her sister. When Chea returned and saw her sister reading it, she was furious. At her lowest point, she didn't want her ugly thoughts to be exposed. Chasen tried to clarify that the diary had already been unlocked, but Chea angrily told her to leave. This incident drove her back to Haewon, thinking that at least he loved her. But over time, she started suspecting him. He seemed to know details about her house, even though he had never been there. Her suspicions were confirmed when she noticed that her diary's lock had been opened again. Chea confronts Haewon about his behavior, and he responds by saying that as her boyfriend, it's natural for him to want to know where she lives, adding that they shouldn't keep any secrets from each other. When Haewon steps aside for a moment, Chea checks his phone and discovers multiple pictures of her taken without her consent throughout the day. Haewon notices this and scolds her, saying she shouldn't go through other people's belongings without permission. Chea confronts him about his obsessive and stalking behavior. In a fit of anger, he throws his phone at her. Terrified, Chea warns him not to follow her or she will report him to the police, then leaves. However, Haewon does follow her and begins banging on her door relentlessly. Inside, Chea cries and screams at him to leave. When the banging finally stops, she manages to fall asleep. But her peace doesn't last long. While sleeping, she feels someone watching her. Opening her eyes, she is horrified to see Haewon sitting on top of her, staring at her intently. He calmly asks if she had a nightmare. Chea forces herself to remain composed and replies that she did, adding how he managed to get inside the house. He dismisses her question, saying it's not important. To herself, Chea agrees. His entry isn't the most pressing concern right now. She gets up, walks to the kitchen, grabs a knife, and makes a run for it. Out in the street, Haewon catches up to her and grabs her by the hair. Thinking quickly, she chops off her hair with the knife and continues running. However, Haewon catches her again, telling her that she can't escape him. He insists that she won't attack him because he is the only source of happiness in her life, claiming she loves him. To his shock, Chea attacks him despite her own fear. The commotion begins to draw a crowd. Among the onlookers, a familiar face appears, Park Yunsu. Chea reflects bitterly that the hand she once thought had saved her had instead pushed her into an even darker place. And now, 7 years later, that nightmare has come back to haunt her. Park Yunsu recalls the incident with Haewon and admits to himself that he was drawn to Haewon's blood. It was a scent he could never forget, nor could he erase Haewon's face from his memory. Years later, Yunsu was shocked to see Chea at the church, and he never expected to encounter Haewon again. Now, Yunsu thinks this might be an easy task for him, but he is reminded of the hunting ban placed upon him. Considering his options, he decides that Han Chea might be of use to him, especially since her relationship with Haewon is clearly far from normal. The next day, Chea and Gurim are seen taking out the recycling. To her surprise, Gurim is doing the task with surprising efficiency. Troubled by the situation with Nam Haewon, Chea considers that she should use Park Yunsu in times like these. As soon as she thinks this, Yunsu suddenly appears in front of her, startling her. Yunsu seems genuinely surprised to see Gurim recycling trash, which causes Gurim to flee in embarrassment. Chea reminds Yunsu of their agreement to never meet again, but he tells her that he's not here for her. He's here for Gurim. Yunsu points out that Gurim never acts this way, and Chea casually replies that she simply told him to do it. Yunsu observes that Gurim seems to listen to her and asks her to convince Gurim to return home, reminding her that Gurim is also a vampire. Chea, however, tells him that she doubts Gurim would listen to her and urges Yunsu not to bother her with such trivial requests. As Chea turns to leave, Yunsu grabs her hand and pulls her closer, telling her that he will handle Nam Haewon for her. Chea is stunned, wondering how Yunsu even knows about Haewon. Yunsu explains that he knows her relationship with Haewon is bad, and back then, he felt bad seeing her in that miserable state. With a smile, he leans in and proposes, "What do you think? It seems like a good idea, right?" Chea questions Yunsu, asking if he thinks she is like him. No matter how sick and twisted Nam Haewon is, she refuses to do what he wants. She reminds him that this is why she saved him back then, but Yunsu counters by saying she only saved him to get rid of the manager, questioning if she's truly a good person. Chea is left speechless by his words. He adds that she can refuse for now, but if she ever finds herself in a difficult position, she can come to him. He will be waiting. She firmly tells him not to bother waiting, but he simply smiles and assures her not to worry about him. At home, Chaya wonders why Yunsu would make such an offer. She questions if Gurim returning to him is that important. However, Gurim suggests that it might be because Yunsu is hungry due to the hunting ban. At the church, Chaya unexpectedly encounters Haewon and tries to avoid talking to him. Spotting Yunsu, she decides that merely showing her face to him should be enough and begins to leave. But Yunsu calls her name from behind. She glares at him, silently pleading for him not to approach her, but he walks directly toward her. Haewon, noticing this, asks if they're planning to get married. Confused, she asks what he's talking about, and he explains that her boyfriend, Yunsu, told him they were getting married soon. Chaya glares at Yunsu with anger, wondering what kind of situation he has dragged her into this time. Now, Chaya finds herself having to choose between two equally bizarre options. Option 1, age unknown, occupation vampire, personality stupid, side note, enjoys killing. Option 2, Nam Haewon, age 30, occupation psychopath, personality dangerous, side note, she once stabbed him. Faced with these choices, she sarcastically says, "Isn't marriage too soon, Park Yunsu?" And so the crazy murder-loving vampire was chosen. Yunsu, in his usual absurd manner, asks if she's mad because he didn't propose properly, promising to make sure the proposal will be grand. Chaya reluctantly goes along with it, thinking it's the best way to deal with Haewon. The women at the church overhear the conversation, swarm around them with questions, and start congratulating them. Before she knows it, Chaya finds herself sitting next to Park Yunsu, a veil on her head, playing the part of his supposed fiancé. She keeps glaring at him, but Yunsu, clearly enjoying her frustration, mockingly asks, "What's wrong?" Chaya wants to punch him but holds back, reminding herself that she can't resort to violence in a church. Instead, she asks him why he's so interested in Haewon, if it's because he wants to hunt him. Yunsu casually replies that it's because Haewon's blood smells delicious, sending a shiver down Chaya's spine with his unsettling expression. When the ladies start bombarding them with questions about how they met, Chaya takes the chance to escape, leaving Yunsu to handle their inquiries alone. Outside, she runs into Haewon, who surprises her by apologizing for what happened 7 years ago. He tells her that since she seems happy now, he won't bother her anymore. With a final goodbye, he walks away, leaving Chaya standing there alone, lost in thought. It's been a week now, and Haewon hasn't shown up since their last encounter. However, Yunsu is still lingering around. Chaya tells Gurim to go back to his dad, referring to Yunsu, complaining that he keeps hanging around her like some ex-husband who wants to see his kid. Gurim simply replies that Yunsu is just crazy, and Chaya lets the conversation drop. She tells Gurim to resolve the situation quickly and leaves for work. After she's gone, Gurim also heads out to buy some ramen. While both of them are away, Haewon sneaks into Chaya's house. He goes through her belongings, takes her clothes, and creepily sniffs them. Then he turns to her laptop and finds the dashcam footage from the day Yunsu's house burned down. As he watches it, he's startled by a voice behind him asking, "What are you doing?" The voice belongs to Gurim. Haewon replies that Chaya asked him to bring the laptop. Gurim, without missing a beat, lies and says that the laptop is actually his. Haewon doesn't back down, insisting otherwise. Gurim, using his vampire abilities, suddenly snatches the laptop, and within moments it's in his hands. Haewon is left confused, unable to figure out how it happened. Smiling, Gurim calmly states that the laptop belongs to him and pointedly asks if Haewon is planning to leave anytime soon. Feeling uneasy, Haewon quickly exits, worried that Gurim might tell Chaya about what just happened. As Haewon steps outside, he comes face to face with Chaya. She looks at him suspiciously and asks why he's there, adding that someone like him wouldn't change so easily. Haewon tries to justify himself by saying that he was worried about her, but Chaya warns him that she will call the cops if he doesn't leave. In response, Haewon threatens her with the dashcam footage he had just seen. Alarmed, Chaya demands to know what he wants and why he's doing this to her. Haewon coldly answers that all he wants is for her to be with him again. Chaya hurriedly rushes into her apartment and immediately asks Gurim if anyone had come in. He casually replies that her ex had been there and was about to take her laptop. Panic washes over her as she worries whether Haewon might have sent the dashcam footage to himself. The thought begins to consume her, haunting her every day and pushing her closer to the edge. She starts seeing his face everywhere she goes. Like a phantom, she can't escape. One evening, while driving home, she sees him in her peripheral vision. As her phone rings, Haewon's voice greets her, commenting on how she finished work earlier than usual. Trying to steady herself, she attempts to sound bold over the phone, but his chilling threat about the footage leaves her shaken. Frustrated and enraged, she pulls her car over, gets out, and screams into the night, demanding that he show himself. Suddenly, the skies open and rain begins pouring down, soaking her as she stands there. Overwhelmed, Chaya collapses, crying uncontrollably. Thoughts race through her mind, torturing her with memories of the past. She begins to wonder if everything would have been different if she hadn't attacked Haewon that night, if she had screamed for help instead. Maybe then she wouldn't have to live with the label of a criminal. As she cries out, "What should I do?" her mind spirals, replaying all the things she wishes she hadn't done. In that moment, all the strength she had been so proud of is utterly gone. As she sits on the wet ground, drenched and broken, her mind begins to go numb. Then, through the rain, Yunsu appears. He silently approaches her, holding an umbrella over her head, shielding her from the storm. She asks him if he's happy now that everything has gone the way he wanted. Yunsu simply stares back at her, his expression unreadable. Chaya tells him to stop looking at her like that. Breaking the silence, Yunsu asks if she wants him to end Nam Haewon, adding that he'll need her help, of course. With hesitation, she says yes and stands up. She tells him she'll help him get the blood he craves, and for the first time, Yunsu gives a smile. In a sudden burst of anger, she jerks the umbrella out of his hands, letting the rain drench him too. A thought crosses her mind. If she's going down, she won't go down alone. But as her strength falters, she stumbles into him. He catches her in his arms, the rain pouring down on both of them. Even in that moment, neither of them completely trusts the other. Moments later, Chaya loses consciousness. When she opens her eyes again, she's at home, with Gurim standing over her, scolding her about catching a fever. She weakly comments that if she had a younger brother, he'd probably be like Gurim. In response, Gurim surprises her with a secret. He tells her that when vampires make a promise, they put their lives on the line. He explains that if Yunsu promised to guarantee her safety, it means he can no longer harm her. The next day, feeling determined, Chaya tells Gurim to call Park Yunsu and tell him that she wants to meet him immediately. She meets up with Yunsu in his car. Yunsu smirks and teases her, saying he thought she had died yesterday. She responds, saying that there are people in worse conditions than her, so she can't afford to die. Yunsu, unfazed, comments that it would be amusing to see her die alone. She retorts that watching him beg for his life while dying of thirst had been quite a sight. Their banter trails off, leaving an awkward silence between them for a moment. Breaking the tension, Chaya asks what he meant by needing her help. Yunsu explains that he needs her to call Haewon and arrange a meeting. He hands her a knife, telling her to use it if things go wrong. She hesitates for a moment before asking if he will actually show up if she calls. Yunsu simply smiles in response. When Haewon receives Chaya's call, he becomes ecstatic and eagerly agrees to meet her. She arranges for them to meet in an abandoned location. Upon seeing her, Haewon greets her with a warm smile, saying she looks beautiful and asking if she's finally decided to come back to him. Chaya coldly flicks his hand away and tells him that she regrets not finishing him off when she had the chance. Then she loudly calls for Park Yunsu. Haewon's expression darkens at the mention of Yunsu's name. Anger and jealousy flare in his eyes, and as she wonders why Yunsu isn't coming out, she calls for him again. Before she can react, Haewon strikes her from behind with a brick, his face twisted in a rage fueled by jealousy. Chaya collapses to the ground, unconscious. She wakes up in an unfamiliar house, disoriented and tense. Haewon is there holding a document and coldly demands she sign a marriage contract. Chaya refuses, but Haiwan grabs her hand, attempting to force her fingerprint onto the paper. She jerks her hand away angrily. In response, Haiwan slaps her, his voice sharp and menacing as he says, "The situation you're in is very real. You should think carefully about your choices if you want to walk out of here on your own two legs." Left alone in the room, Chaya is overwhelmed by fear, unsure of what to do. Then her eyes fall on the knife Yunsu had given her. Gripping it tightly, she begins to question whether this is her only option to rid herself of Haiwan. Suddenly, a realization dawns on her. Yunsu must have anticipated all of this. The help he claimed to need wasn't simply about luring Haiwan out. It was about using her to do the dirty work he couldn't, thanks to his hunting ban. She concludes that he's likely nearby, waiting in the shadows, ready to appear as soon as he smells the scent of blood. A short while later, Haiwan returns to the room. "I'm the only one left for you," he says, his voice low and chilling. He pulls her into an unwelcome hug, murmuring that she's pitiful and unlucky. But before he can say more, a sudden stabbing sound fills the room. "Don't pity me," she says coldly. Not far away, Yunsu catches the scent of blood, the very scent he's been waiting for. He appears instantly, his vampiric instincts taking over as he lunges at Haiwan. Haiwan cries out in pain as Yunsu sinks his fangs into him. However, Yunsu quickly pulls back in confusion. The blood lacks the scent he craves. Bewildered, he turns to Chaya. "You were fooled, Park Yunsu," she says. She hadn't stabbed Haiwan. Instead, she had wounded her own leg. Yunsu calls her name and begins walking toward her. She tries to run, but he grabs her, asking where she thinks she's going before tossing her onto the bed. He accuses her of wanting to die by playing games with vampires. She retorts that he can't actually hurt her. When he demands to know how she knows that, she brushes him off, saying it's none of his business. Wiping the blood from his shirt, she mockingly asks what he's going to do now that he's banned from hunting. Yunsu finds her taunts deeply irritating. He throws the knife aside and, overcome by his vampire instincts, nearly bites her. She screams, reminding him of his promise, which stops him in his tracks. Annoyed, he mutters that she's unbearable, but Chaya grabs him by the collar and boldly tells him she's stronger than he thinks. Then, she leaves him alone in the room. Outside, as rain pours down, Chaya reflects on her misfortune. Unable to walk properly because of her injury, she suddenly sees Gurim standing nearby with an umbrella. He had followed them out of curiosity about the meeting. Chaya thanks him for the information he provided about vampires. Gurim, concerned, asks about Park Yunsu, and she casually responds that Yunsu is a bit mad right now. Meanwhile, inside, Yunsu is reeling from the realization that the blood he smelled earlier truly belonged to Han Chaya. He recalls the small scratch on her neck back in the alley and is stunned that such a tiny amount of blood had caused such a reaction. As he pieces everything together, he remembers how every time he smelled Chaya's blood, it has driven him to the brink of losing control. He feels foolish for not recognizing the truth sooner, even though it was so obvious. Despite everything, Yunsu concludes that Chaya couldn't have known about this herself. Unlike Haiwan and even Chaya, he believes she isn't unlucky, she's extraordinarily lucky. In the next scene, Chaya wakes up screaming from a nightmare. For the past few days, both Park Yunsu and Nam Haiwan have been haunting her dreams. She recalls how furious Yunsu looked that day and how neither of them had been in their right mind. At that moment, her phone starts ringing. Gurim, still half asleep, grumbles for her to pick it up quickly. When she sees the caller ID, she mutters that she's probably going to die today. Gurim asks who it is, and she replies that it's Yunsu. Chaya steps out of her apartment, thinking that it has been a week since their last encounter, and now he has come to pick another fight. She reminds herself that he was the one who betrayed her first, and she has plenty to say to him as well. However, when she approaches, Yunsu simply smiles and says, "You came down." He casually tells her to relax, assuring her that he's not going to eat her. She is caught off guard by how cheerful he seems. Then, Yunsu tells her there's one last thing to resolve. He has come to take Gurim. He reminds her that he helped her get rid of Nam Haiwan, so now it's her turn to return the favor. Chaya immediately pulls out the knife he had given her and warns him to stay where he is. Yunsu chuckles and tells her to keep the knife and her threats to herself. She then questions whether Namhaewon is really dead. When Yunsu confirms it, she tells him to wait while she tries to convince Gurim to come with him. As he watches her limp away on crutches, still holding the knife, he thinks to himself that Chaya is truly something. Meanwhile, as Chaya heads upstairs, wondering how she will persuade Gurim, she spots him coming down the stairs. The moment he sees her, he turns around to go back up, but Chaya quickly asks if he came down because of Yunsu. She tells him that Yunsu is here to take him back, but Gurim stubbornly replies that he doesn't care. Chaya asks if he plans to live with her forever and points out that Yunsu keeps coming back. She adds that it must be bothering him too, which makes Gurim pause. She urges him to come down and at least talk to Yunsu. When she asks, "Aren't you and Yunsu like family?" Gurim remains silent for a moment before hesitantly asking if he can just continue living with her. She reminds him that it's not possible. At the end of the day, he is still a vampire. This comment offends Gurim, and he walks past her toward Yunsu. When he comes face to face with Yunsu, he firmly states that he will not simply follow him back. First, he demands to hear the truth. Why did Yunsu kill his parents? We transition into a flashback as Yunsu narrates that after his father left for another country, he was left completely alone, with no one by his side and no purpose, just existing. One snowy night, a woman invited him to stay over, concerned about the weather. Yunsu glanced at her neck before agreeing. Of course, he used her to quench his thirst. As he was leaving, a man caught sight of him. Yunsu pulled the man into the room, only to realize that the stranger somehow knew his name. Looking closely, he recognized him. It was Son, his old friend. Yunsu had believed that everyone had died when the house burned down. His father had many children, and Yunsu had assumed none of them had survived. Apparently, Son had thought the same. Noticing that Yunsu hadn't aged, Sion quickly deduced that he had become a vampire, just as he had always wanted. Without hesitation, Sion asked Yunsu to turn him into one as well. Yunsu was startled by the request, but Son insisted. Yunsu thought to himself that life as a vampire was unbearably lonely. No friends to talk to, no one to lean on. But if Sion had the same teeth as him, perhaps things would be different. The idea of finally having someone who understood him was tempting, and so he agreed. Sion became a vampire but continued living as a human. Then he met the love of his life, whom he accidentally harmed. From that moment, his will to live faded. One day, Son told Yunsu that he was going to reveal his true identity to the woman he loved, hoping that she would choose to become a vampire too, that she would understand how deeply he loved her. But Yunsu thought to himself that it was all a lie. There were only two possible reactions when humans learned the truth. Either they became jealous or they ended up hating them. And just as Yunsu expected, the woman, who was pregnant with Sion's child, chose to leave, terrified of him. With tears streaming down his face, Sion confessed to Yunsu that he regretted becoming a vampire. After that, he disappeared, only to return 13 years later with Gurim. He had hurt his wife while pretending to be Yunsu. Crying, he told Yunsu that his family looked at him as if they had seen a ghost. Son had changed his son's name from Hansuk to Gurim, and had cried all day. It was difficult for Yunsu to watch him suffer. He wondered why it was so hard for Sion to let go of his ties to humans, why he continued to regret it. Suddenly, Yunsu heard a noise and rushed to see Son choking Gurim. He immediately shoved Sion back and demanded to know what the hell he was doing. Sion, still crying, said that it was better for Gurim not to live, that he couldn't let his son suffer the life of a vampire. Yunsu argued that no matter what, how could he do this to his own child? There was nothing they could do about it now. But Son, overwhelmed with sorrow, insisted that he had believed life would be better as a vampire. They didn't have to worry about food or clothing. Yet living in secrecy and being hated by the people he loved was too much to bear. He accused Yunsu of knowing all of this from the start. Yunsu tried to argue that becoming a vampire was Son's own choice, but Son countered that Yunsu should have stopped him. Sion said that Yunsu had known the truth all along and still made a selfish decision. Falling to his knees, Son wondered when his existence would finally come to an end. Then, looking up at Yunsu, he asked if there was a way. if Yunsu could end other vampires. Desperately, he begged Yunsu to kill both him and Gurim, insisting that since Gurim wasn't Yunsu's child, it would be no different from hunting for food. But Yunsu refused, saying that if he did, he would be alone again. Son continued to plead, and in that moment, Yunsu was consumed by guilt. Guilt for turning Son into a vampire just because he had wanted a friend. And now, Son would become his last friend. Yunsu drank blood from the silver cup, and in his final moments, Son once again told him to do the same to Gurim. But Yunsu couldn't bring himself to do it. Now, in the present, Gurim demands to know if Yunsu was the one who did it. Yunsu answers that yes, it was him. Upon hearing this, Gurim runs away, and as Yunsu watches him disappear, he recalls Son's last words and wonders how he could ever tell Gurim the whole truth. When Gurim finally stops running, his mind is flooded with questions. How could Yunsu say it so easily? If he truly felt that way, then why did he stay by Gurim's side? Why did he take care of him, even though Gurim wasn't even a full vampire? As he stands there, lost in thought, a man approaches him from behind. It was Father. He comments that it seems Yunsu has prepared something for him. Meanwhile, at home, Chea thinks about how it seems that Gurim and Yunsu haven't made up. Gurim hasn't returned for days now, so she assumes he must have gone back to Yunsu's house. Then there's a knock at her door. Thinking it might be Gurim, she quickly opens it, only to find Park Yunsu standing there instead. Startled, she tries to shut the door, asking what he wants. But he holds it open and asks if Gurim has come back to her. Both of them quickly realize that Gurim is missing. Chea steps outside and asks if Yunsu has checked all the usual places. He nods, saying that he has. She then asks if he's looked at their old house, and again he confirms that he has. Yunsu hesitates for a moment before finally asking if she would come with him, since Gurim wouldn't listen to him. Given the situation, Chea agrees. She finds it strange to see Yunsu looking anxious, but she says nothing as they head to his old mansion. The grass outside is all burnt, but the house itself remains unchanged. Yunsu leads her inside. The air is thick with dust, making it difficult to see. Chaya glances around and comments that she doesn't think Gurim would come here, suggesting they leave. But Yunsu suddenly sits down on the floor. Curious, she steps closer to see what he's looking at, and that's when she sees Gurim lying motionless on the ground. Chaya was shocked, while Yunsu just sat there, slumped down. She asked what had happened to Gurim, but there was no answer. It was only then that she noticed how unbearably cold it was inside the house, so cold that even her warm breath turned icy. Gurim lay there like a lifeless doll. Then, in a whisper, Park Yunsu muttered, "Gurim isn't breathing." He picked him up and quietly moved past her. Chea, terrified, collapsed onto the floor. Overwhelmed, she decided she could no longer stay there and hurriedly left. Days passed and Yunsu still wasn't answering her calls. Worried, she wondered what had actually happened. Gurim is a vampire, she thought. How could he have died? It didn't make any sense. He had no wounds. Regret gnawed at her. She wished she hadn't asked him to leave that night. She wished she had reached out sooner. Determined to get answers, she set off to find Park Yunsu. Meanwhile, Yunsu sat by Gurim's unmoving body, staring at him. Why won't he wake up? He wondered. It should have been impossible for him to die so easily. He was a half-vampire, after all. He reached out, holding Gurim's hand, and an eerie sensation washed over him. He really feels dead. But that shouldn't be possible. Only a vampire could kill another vampire, and as far as he knew, they were the only ones left in Korea. Then suddenly, a thought struck him. His gaze fell on Gurim's pocket. Reaching inside, he pulled out a small object, a button with a bat emblem. The moment he saw it, rage surged through him. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit room, a chessboard sat neatly arranged. Father waited patiently, as if expecting him. Yunsu stormed in and, without hesitation, overturned the chessboard in a fit of fury. Father only smiled. Yunsu told him that returning home had not been easy. Father smirked and said that it seemed Yunsu had come to update him about the child's condition, but judging from his expression, he had already figured out that Gurim had passed away. Yunsu asked if Gurim was really dead, and Father replied that it was all because Yunsu broke the rules. He then said, "Checkmate," before adding that Yunsu was the one who ended Gurim. Yunsu, overwhelmed with anger, attacked father, shouting why he had to ruin everything around him. First, it was his mother, and now Gurim. He punched the ground in frustration, demanding to know why father always took everything from him. Why did he have to do this to Gurim when it was he who had broken the rules? Father easily threw him across the room, commenting that his arrogance was higher than the sky. He then choked him with an invisible force, telling Yunsu that no matter what he did, he had no right to interfere. The strength Yunsu possessed had been given to him by father, so how dare he use it against him? He reminded Yunsu that the only reason he had survived all this time was because father had pity on him. Meanwhile, Chaya entered Park Yunsu's house, searching for him. As she looked around, she saw Gurim lying on the bed. She sat beside him, thinking that surely Yunsu would find a way to save him. She eventually fell asleep, wondering when Yunsu would come back while he remained unconscious at father's place. Both of them woke up at the same time. Chaya was shocked to see that Gurim was no longer on the bed. Just then, Yunsu teleported behind her. Taking in the empty space where Gurim had been, he muttered to himself, "How could I forget?" With a tear-streaked face, he said, "When vampires die, they disappear." Yunsu collapsed onto the ground. Chaya, alarmed, asked what he was talking about, but he only wept in silence. He clasped his hands together as if in prayer, and Chaya, overwhelmed, also started crying. She pleaded with him to tell her that it wasn't true, that Gurim wasn't really gone. Desperate for an answer, she reached out to him, but Yunsu suddenly pushed her hand away, accidentally scratching the side of her lip in the process. A drop of blood trickled down upon it, and as soon as Yunsu saw it, his eyes changed. Slowly, he started moving toward her. Chaya instinctively backed away and asked if he was planning to harm her. She reminded him of their promise that he couldn't hurt her, but Yunsu barely seemed to register her words. His voice was hollow as he muttered, "I don't want to go on like this." Chaya tried to snap him out of it, but he held her wrist tightly. Then, with an eerie slowness, he wiped the blood from her face and murmured, "I need more." Just then, something shifted in his expression. He sensed another presence in the house. Taking advantage of the distraction, Chaya swung her crutch at him, striking him before storming out, cursing him under her breath. Yunsu called after her, telling her not to leave, but she didn't stop. Anger flared in Chaya's chest. She had been so worried about him, yet all he could think about was his own torment. But before she could take another step, a forceful grip yanked her back and shoved her into a room. It was Yunsu. He shut the door, hiding her from sight, just as father entered. The two vampires locked eyes, and father smirked. "It's good to see you're still thinking ahead, even in the middle of all this," he remarked. He glanced around and added, "I came to check on things. It looks like you're the only one left in this house now. So, Gurim is really gone." Then, as if nothing had happened, he turned and left, throwing in a final warning for Yunsu to behave. Inside the room, Chaya had heard everything. Her mind raced. There's someone more powerful than Yunsu? But then, all other thoughts faded as the weight of reality settled over her. Gurim was truly gone. Just then, a voice broke the silence. "Has he left?" Yunsu froze, confused. Chaya, on the other hand, was in complete shock. Standing in front of her was Gurim. Still dazed, he looked at her and asked again, "Has that man left?" As soon as Gurim's name left Chaya's lips, Yunsu barged into the room. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Yunsu took a step forward, but Gurim immediately backed away. He turned to Chaya and said firmly, "I'll go back with you. Otherwise, I'll never come back again." Chaya hesitated before nodding. Yunsu was stunned by this, but remained silent. He simply stood there as Chaya and Gurim left together. In the car, Chaya glanced at Gurim and cautiously asked, "What happened?" Gurim shook his head. "I don't remember." She noticed dried blood on his face, but chose not to press him further. Once they arrived home, Gurim washed his face without another word and went straight to bed. Chaya also decided to sleep, convincing herself that she was just overthinking things. But Gurim wasn't asleep. He genuinely had no memory of what had happened, only that he was sure he had died back then. And when he woke up, an unbearable thirst consumed him. He had wanted to bite Chaya, who was right beside him, but somehow he managed to pull away and leave. No amount of water could quench the thirst, and it drove him nearly insane. Then, in the depths of his desperation, he saw a deer. Before he even realized what he was doing, he had attacked it. Now, as he lay beside Chaya, the hunger still gnawed at him. It felt as though he hadn't eaten in 50 years. The next morning, Chaya was startled awake by loud noises coming from outside. Irritated, she got out of bed and opened the door to see what was happening. What she saw left her in absolute disbelief. Standing there, surrounded by moving boxes, was Park Yunsu. She frowned and asked, "What are you doing here this early in the morning?" Yunsu smirked and gestured to the boxes. "Can't you see I'm moving in?" Seeing Chaya's frowning face, Yunsu commented that she should at least try to look a little happy. She ignored him and instead asked who had there before, suspiciously adding whether Yunsu had dealt with that person. He stated that he was moving in like a normal person. Chaya reminded him that a presumed dead person had just come back to life. Nothing about this was normal. Yunsu glanced around and complained about the size of the place, calling it small. His words irritated Chaya, who demanded to know if he was doing all this because of Gurim. She accused him of being too obsessed with both her and Gurim, adding that Gurim wouldn't be happy to see him there. Then, with a mocking smirk, she taunted him, saying that vampires were pretty useless if they couldn't even take care of a child. She brought up the fact that Gurim had run away before and mockingly asked if Yunsu would cry again if it happened. Irritated by her words, Yunsu leaned in slightly and asked if she wanted to see him end his obsession. He added, with a smirk, that her blood tasted really good. Chaya didn't hesitate. She bit his finger and rushed inside, shutting the door behind her as she called out that she didn't want to know. When Gurim asked what had happened, she decided it was best not to tell him about Yunsu's sudden appearance next door. Instead, she asked him what he wanted to eat, but he simply replied that he wasn't hungry. Later, as Chaya removed a Band-Aid from her skin, the faint scent of blood filled the air. Almost immediately, Gurim tensed. He abruptly asked if they could go out. To their discomfort, Park Yunsu followed them to the store. Chaya shot him a look, silently demanding to know why he was there, but Yunsu only responded with a feigned look of confusion. Gurim, growing irritated, told them to stop bickering with their eyes because it was annoying. The three of them stood together awkwardly, the heavy silence suffocating. Chaya glanced at both of them standing on either side of her, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The silence was unbearable. She noticed that Gurim wasn't eating, and when she asked why, he replied that he didn't have an appetite. Yunsu, who had been listening closely, suddenly extended his hand as a man passed behind him, subtly scratching the man's skin. Chaya caught the deliberate action, realizing Yunsu had done it on purpose. Gurim, who had been relatively still until now, suddenly stiffened. Yunsu turned to him, his gaze sharp. "Did you become a vampire?" he asked. Yunsu told Gurim to come with him, but Gurim refused and ran away. Everywhere he went, the overwhelming scent of blood clung to the people around him, making it impossible to escape. Eventually, he stumbled into an alley and curled up against the wall, trying to block out the sensation. As he sat there, a pink-haired girl approached him. Unlike everyone else, he noticed that she didn't carry the scent of blood. She asked if he was the boy who had died. Gurim froze, unable to respond. Seeing his reaction, she told him that he was just like her. When he didn't say anything, she tilted her head and asked if he was afraid of her. Panicked, Gurim attempted to run, but she stopped him effortlessly. She then asked if he was struggling with the scent of blood, and when he hesitantly asked how she knew, she handed him a small packet filled with animal blood. She explained that she could provide more whenever he was hungry, but warned him never to drink from a human. "Once you do," she added, "you can never go back." Before he could ask anything else, she vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Yunsu reassured Chaya that Gurim would surely come back to her. Just as he finished speaking, his phone suddenly rang. He saw the caller ID, and it was Father. Without another word, he hurriedly left, driving off in a rush and leaving Chaya behind. Remembering that she had an appointment at the hospital, Chaya made her way there as well. While waiting for the elevator, she coincidentally ran into Yunsu again. This time, however, he wasn't alone. Chea, having never seen father before, didn't think much of it and casually called out Yunsu's name. Yunsu's eyes father, who was watching the interaction with interest. Yunsu remained silent, not responding to her. Then, with a slow, menacing smile, father turned to Yunsu and asked, "Do you know her?" Chea wondered who the man was. His gaze was unsettling, and when she glanced at Yunsu, she noticed how nervous he looked. Without showing her unease, she simply replied that she was his neighbor before stepping out of the elevator. As she left, she could feel the man's eyes on her, his smile lingering. Outside, the eerie feeling stayed with her. Something about that man was deeply unsettling, and then it clicked. He must be Park Yunsu's father. Meanwhile, Yunsu and father sat across from each other at a table. Yunsu asked why he had suddenly been called, to which father replied that he felt bad for scolding his son as soon as he returned and wanted to check in on him. He mentioned how he had remained silent about the Xi'an incident, but had recently noticed Yunsu playing strange tricks, disposing of a body in a suitcase, hunting when he wasn't supposed to, and most curious of all, acting more human. With a smile, he added that perhaps it was because of the woman from the elevator. Yunsu, keeping his expression neutral, questioned what father was implying. Father smirked. "I never forget the scent of blood. Hers smelled just like the one you were trying to hide in the mansion." Yunsu didn't respond. Father pressed further, asking why he hadn't gotten rid of her. Yunsu replied that it was because of the hunting ban. But father didn't buy it, suggesting that there was another reason, given how close they seemed. Again, Yunsu remained silent. Observing his reaction, father commented that Yunsu was making the same troubled face he had in the elevator. Then, after a brief pause, he said he would lift the hunting ban and asked if Yunsu would kill her now. The tension between them thickened. Yunsu casually dismissed the topic, calling father delusional. Father dropped it with a smile but left him with a warning, reminding him what happened to Son when he fell for a human. Yunsu scoffed, saying, "Chea was nothing more than entertainment, a toy he could throw away whenever he wanted. Falling for a human," he added, "was a ridiculous idea." Later, alone in his car, Yunsu found himself irritated. Running into Chea in front of father had been the worst possible scenario. His words from earlier echoed in his head, only making his annoyance grow. When he reached his apartment, he ran into Chea again. She approached, mentioning that Gurim hadn't come home yet, but Yunsu didn't stop walking. With a brief side glance and a blank expression, he ignored her completely. Somewhere else, the pink-haired woman hurriedly woke a man up, urging him to leave before her father returned. She warned him that if her father saw him, he would be dead. Quickly pushing him out of the house, she erased his memories before shutting the door behind him. Inside, she froze upon seeing father already sitting on the couch. He called her by name, Rose, and asked angrily why she was still associating with humans, even in Korea. She brushed off his scolding, saying he didn't like it when she spent time with vampires either. Assuring him that everything was fine since she had erased the man's memories, father coldly replied that of course it would be fine, because he had already taken care of him. Her expression darkened as anger flared within her. She demanded to know if he didn't trust her. Without hesitation, father replied that he trusted no one, not even his own daughter. Then he informed her that they were returning to their hometown. She protested, saying she wanted to stay longer. He narrowed his eyes, asking if it was because she wanted to see Yunsu. Her thoughts immediately went to Gurim. Did he know that she had met him? Keeping her composure, she instead asked if she could meet Yunsu. Father dismissed the idea, remarking that Yunsu might not even remember her, but Rose knew that wasn't the case. He continued, saying they shouldn't meet. Yunsu hated him, and she was his daughter. Later, as she walked through the streets, Rose found herself lost in thought. Her father was a vampire, her mother most likely human. So then, what did that make her? Back at the apartments, Gurim stood in front of Yunsu's door, hesitating. Just as he was about to knock, the door swung open from the inside. Yunsu stood there, his gaze unreadable. Gurim hesitated before finally asking, "What should I do now?" Yunsu tells Gurim to come inside first. They sit together, and Yunsu asks if the blood from earlier was animal blood. Seeing Gurim hesitate, he kneels in front of him and asks if he remembers what happened before he passed out. Gurim recalls that the person who took him away had blonde hair and gave him something to eat. Yunsu tells him that the man was father. When Gurim asks why he did that to him, Yunsu considers the situation. Something about it feels off. Why did it have to be Gurim? If it was meant as a punishment for Yunsu, then why did father come back to check on Gurim? It seems even he wasn't certain whether Gurim had really died. Yunsu tells Gurim that father is after him and will return once he discovers that Gurim is still alive. Extending his hand, he urges Gurim to come with him, promising to teach him how to hunt. However, Gurim refuses, insisting that he will never drink from humans. He recalls that someone warned him against it. When Yunsu asks who, Gurim repeats Rose's words, that once you drink human blood, there is no going back. Yunsu demands to know what that means, but Gurim, unsure himself, says he needs time to think. He adds that he isn't even certain whether he has truly become a vampire. As Gurim tries to leave, Yunsu warns him that if he continues like this, he will end up hurting Chaya. He asks if Gurim will be able to handle that. Without answering, Gurim finally steps outside, only to find Chaya standing there. Startled, he hides behind her while Yunsu silently watches. Chaya tells Gurim to go inside their apartment first before turning to Yunsu. She confronts him, demanding to know if he's still trying to force Gurim to go with him. Yunsu doesn't respond. Frustrated, she begins lecturing him, but he simply turns around and walks away. Annoyed, she follows him, asking why he's ignoring her. Then she grabs him and pins him against the wall, demanding to know why he's acting like she doesn't exist. If he has something to say, she insists he say it to her face. Yunsu sighs, telling her not to act so high and mighty. He notices how close she is, her foot brushing against his. The proximity irritates him, and he coldly tells her not to worry. He'll be gone soon. Then, as he leaves, he deliberately bumps her shoulder. Back inside the apartment, Chaya sees Gurim and notices that something about him feels different. He ran away for days and still hasn't eaten. Something is definitely wrong. Outside, Rose sits on a tree, wondering how to call Gurim. He must be starving by now. Suddenly, a voice interrupts her. Yunsu is standing beside her, staring intently as he asks, "Who are you?" Rose thinks to herself that she didn't want to run into Yunsu. Since there are no other vampires in Korea, he immediately asks if she is with father and reminds her of the rule not to interfere with each other's territory. Rose asks if he remembers her, introducing herself. She notes that it's probably because she has grown up now. Back then, she was just a little girl, and the three of them, including Son, were close. Now, Yunsu remembers. She was the eldest daughter. He asks if the rumors about her being a vampire were true. Rose jumps past the question, saying she's not here to talk about that. She came to see the kid. Yunsu also comes down from the tree and asks what's going on with Gurim. She hands him a pack of animal blood, explaining that Gurim can't drink from humans. Irritated, Yunsu demands to know if she's the one who told Gurim that and what exactly she's trying to do. Frustrated, Rose tells him that mixed blood vampires are different from normal ones. As she turns to leave, Yunsu scoffs, calling it nonsense. Then he warns her to stay away from Gurim, reminding her that it was because of her father that he almost died. Despite this, Rose still tries to hand him the packet in case Gurim gets hungry, but Yunsu flicks it away, coldly telling her not to touch him. As he walks away, he wonders when everything became such a mess and for what reason. Then he realizes it all started the moment he met Han Chaya. That was when his once peaceful life began to crack, little by little. A voice in his head keeps whispering that it's all because of her. In the next scene, Gurim stirs in his sleep, feeling thirsty. Half conscious, he opens his eyes, his vision hazy. In his dazed state, he mistakes Chaya's neck for that of a deer. His eyes turn yellow as he grabs her hair and lunges toward her, attempting to bite. Suddenly, Yunsu teleports into the room and violently throws Gurim away from her. A heavy silence follows. Chaya, shaking with fear, finally manages to speak. What just happened? Yunsu looks at Gurim, who himself is frozen in shock at his own actions. Why did I save Han Chaya? Yunsu wonders, unable to answer himself. Yunsu wonders why he keeps saving her. Back at the mansion, it had been the perfect opportunity. He himself could not harm her, yet he still saved her. Once again, his father's words echo in his mind. On the other hand, Gurim starts crying, asking if he really tried to bite Chea. He looks at her directly, searching for an answer, and she gives a nervous expression. He insists that he thought it was just a dream. Yunsu, however, tells him that it was his instinct to hunt. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupts them. It's a neighbor who came to check in after hearing screams. Chea quickly assures him that everything is fine, but Yunsu starts walking toward the door, his gaze fixed on her as he moves. He opens it and asks the man if he wants to check inside. The neighbor declines, but Yunsu insists. Chea is confused as Yunsu tells the man that he needs his help. The moment the man steps inside, Yunsu suddenly throws him into the air and grabs him by the neck. He then turns to Gurim and coldly says that he will teach him how to hunt. Gurim, horrified, begs him to stop, but Yunsu doesn't listen. In desperation, Gurim teleports away. Even after this, Yunsu thinks to himself that he cannot let the man go. Chea rushes forward, flinging the door open and shouting for help, but Yunsu slams it shut. She demands that he open it, but he simply stands there, still gripping the man by the neck. Turning his gaze toward her, his eyes turn yellow. Then he tells her to watch closely as he sinks his fangs into the man's neck. Tears stream down Chea's face as she realizes that she had almost forgotten about those fangs, that he could easily do the same to her. Fueled by anger and fear, she lunges at him, determined not to just sit and watch. She curses him through her tears, trying to stop him. Yunsu grabs the knife from her hand, and in the process, her palm gets cut. The scent of blood fills the air. Immediately, Yunsu drops the man and steps toward her. "Stay back," Chea warns, her voice shaking. Yunsu thinks to himself that this is exactly how it should be. She should be scared of him. Without realizing it, she had come too close, but he won't allow it any longer. Chea glares at him. "I forgot what you are, a maniac vampire who uses and hunts people, but I won't let you do that in front of me ever again," Yunsu smirks. Then he takes her wounded hand. Love is nonsense, he tells himself. But her blood, he really does love that. Lowering his head, he licks her hand. As Gurim runs away, he thinks that Park Yunsu was right. He would end up hurting Chea. Wishing for things to go back to how they used to be, he suddenly runs into Rose, who was approaching him. She sighs in relief, saying she's glad she didn't leave. Noticing his troubled expression, she comments that it looks like he caused an incident. Gurim remains silent. She reassures him not to worry, saying she's not like Park Yunsu. She's not angry with him. Suddenly, a shadow falls over Gurim's face. He turns to see Father standing behind Rose. With a menacing smile, Father comments that the situation looks rather suspicious before turning his gaze to Gurim and asking, "How are you?" Rose barely has time to react before screaming, "Father!" as they both vanish. Gurim wakes up in a house he recognizes. He remembers being here before with the man everyone calls Father. That day, Gurim had followed him because he promised to tell him who he really was. Father had handed him a silver goblet, saying that if he drank from it and died, then he was a vampire, but if he survived, he was human. Gurim had chosen to drink the blood. Now realization hits him. If a vampire drinks another vampire's blood, they die. But if a human drinks a vampire's blood, they become one. From outside the room, Gurim hears Rose arguing with Father, demanding that he let Gurim go. She warns him that it's been a day and a half already, and Yunsu will soon come searching. Then she pleads with him to stop experimenting on mixed bloods. Father replies that he's doing this for her. He wants her to become a true vampire. Rose argues that she never even wanted that, adding that every experiment before this ended in death. Father dismisses her concerns, pointing out that Gurim is alive and well. He calls it a rare opportunity, saying it's been a long time since he's seen results similar to Rose's. Rose begs him to stop, telling him that all of this is tormenting her. He simply responds, "I just want you to live forever." Desperate, Rose grabs a glass vase, shatters it, and lunges at Father with a shard, managing to cut his cheek. But the wound heals almost instantly. Unfazed, Father tells her that she doesn't understand how wonderful it is to know that you will never die. Then he turns, unlocking the door to the room where Gurim is held. He tells Rose that since she insists that all life must come to an end, he will show her the ending she wants. Grabbing a metal spear, he looks down at Gurim and coldly says, "You can die now." Then he plunges it into Gurim's chest. Rose shouts for him to stop, but Father comments that since Gurim is a half-vampire, he won't die just yet. Then, almost mockingly, he asks if he should do it again. Rose immediately steps in front of Gurim, shielding him. Father tells her to move, but she refuses. "No more," she says firmly. Then in an instant, she disappears with Gurim. Outside, she wakes Gurim up, shaking him gently. "Do you know a human?" she asks urgently. When he groggily nods, she tells him, "Go to them." Confused, Gurim asks why, and she responds, "Ask for their blood." His eyes widen slightly. "But you told me not to." "This is different," she insists. "You need it to stay alive. If you don't, you might die." At his house, Yunsu was growing restless. Gurim still hadn't returned. Then suddenly, his phone vibrates. He checks the screen, a message from Rose, "Father has returned." As he steps out, he runs into Cheya. The moment she sees him, she freezes. Then, without a word, she hurries into her apartment, slamming the door behind her. Inside, she presses her back against the door, her body trembling. Thank God, she thinks. Thank God Park Yunsu didn't actually hunt that man. She slowly slides to the floor, realizing just how scared she really is. Yesterday, it felt like Yunsu wasn't even trying to hunt, he just wanted her to be afraid of him. Her hands curl into fists, she curses him under her breath. Then suddenly, a dull sound against the door startles her. She turns her head when she hears a voice, weak and desperate. "Cheya, please save me." Her heart jumps. It was Gurim. She quickly opens the door, gasping when she sees him. "What happened to you?" Without waiting for an answer, she pulls him inside. Her eyes widen in alarm as she looks at his wound. It was really bad. "We need to go to a hospital," she says immediately. But then she hesitates. "He's a vampire. Maybe he can heal?" "Can you?" she asks. Gurim weakly shakes his head. "I need your blood." Cheya stiffens. Her body goes cold as memories of last night flood her mind. His eyes, they look just like Park Yunsu's. Fear creeps up her spine. "I'll die otherwise," Gurim says weakly. Those words. They were the same words Yunsu had said back when the mansion burned down. She remembers how Yunsu immediately attacked the manager. Would Gurim do the same? "No," he whispers. "I just need a little." But fear still grips her. "Yesterday you tried to attack me." Gurim doesn't have the strength to argue. "Please," he murmurs, barely holding on. Cheya stays frozen. "He's a vampire too, just like Park Yunsu." Then, before she can respond, Gurim collapses. When Gurim opens his eyes again, the first thing he sees is red. Cheya was sitting beside him. She had given him her blood. Tears fell silently from her eyes. Gurim grabbed her hand, holding it as they sat together in silence. Cheya stared at him. Without realizing it, "I gave my blood to a vampire." "He won't attack me, right?" Then her body swayed, and she fainted. Gurim caught her just before she fell. Then he glanced down at his hand. His breath caught in his throat. He was surprised by his own appearance as his body suddenly grew to that of an adult. When Cheya regained consciousness, she didn't recognize him and asked who he was and what he was doing in her house. Noticing that he was naked, she smacked him with a pillow. He quickly told her, "It's me, Gurim." She looked around for Gurim, then frowned and pointed out that he didn't have a wound on his stomach. Embarrassed, he covered himself up and explained that when vampires drink blood, they heal. Then he asked for some clothes. They went to Park Yunsu's house, which was luckily not locked. Still skeptical, Cheya asked if he was really Gurim. He said he was. She wondered what had really happened when she passed out. She then asked if Yunsu knew he could be like this. Gurim replied that he wasn't sure, but probably not while looking at himself in the mirror. He thought that this might be the reason Rose had told him not to drink from humans. Cheya urged him to come out quickly, saying they had to leave before Yunsu came back. Gurim stepped out, commenting, "You're so cranky." When Cheya saw him, she scowled and muttered that his outfit was annoying, adding that it reminded her of Park Yunsu. Just as they were about to leave and Cheya opened the door, they were met with Father standing on the other side. Meanwhile, Yunsu, who had gone to Father Zay's house, noticed traces of Gurim's blood on the floor. Hearing a slamming sound, he followed it and found Rose there. He asked her what had happened and where Gurim was. With tears in her eyes, she told him that she had lost track of father. Before Yunsu could finish his sentence, father teleported there and said, "Are you looking for me?" Then he dropped Gurim and Han Chaya onto the floor. Yunsu noticed Chaya, but then turned his attention to the unfamiliar person beside her. "Who's this?" he asked. Father smirked. "Isn't he the kid you care so much about?" Then, turning to Rose, he said, "We're going back." Then, as if remembering something, he looked at Han Chaya and grabbed her by the neck. "I should take care of the witness." Suddenly, Yunsu appeared between them and grabbed father's wrist. His eyes darkened. "Let go," he ordered. Father asks Yunsu how long he plans to keep resisting. Yunsu replies that he cannot let him take Gurim, to which father remarks that it seems Yunsu is actually trying to protect Chea instead. Seeing Yunsu remain silent, he smirks, realizing he is right. Then, he questions whether she is worth all this trouble, asking if Yunsu is truly willing to risk everything for her before striking him aside. Placing his foot on Yunsu's chest, father reveals the vial of blood he took from Gurim earlier, stating that it is more than enough for his experiment, meaning both Yunsu and Gurim are no longer needed. Rose, desperate to stop him, pushes father away and urges Yunsu to take Gurim and escape. But as soon as Yunsu tries to move, father sends him crashing into a wall again. Grabbing Yunsu by the collar, he tells him that Rose grew after drinking human blood. He had originally intended to destroy everything that night, but chose to spare Yunsu. Yet, this is how Yunsu repays him. Yunsu, angered by his words, seizes father by the collar and demands if causing destruction and changing him is what he considers saving someone. Then he strikes father across the face, calling his words nonsense. Now furious, father retaliates by striking Yunsu with great force, sending him collapsing to the ground. Inside the house, the only one left standing was father. He begins to take Gurim with him, but Chaya, gathering her courage, grabs his arm to stop him. He turns to her with amused, only now remembering she was still there, and mockingly asks if she truly believes she can stop him. Chaya, overwhelmed, questions herself. Why did she even try to help Gurim? She feels powerless. As father steps toward her, he casually remarks that he nearly overlooked something important. Terrified, Chea instinctively grabs whatever she can and throws it at him. Unbothered, he continues closing the distance between them. She backs away, her hand brushing against a bottle containing Gurim's blood. Gripping it tightly, she asks herself, why must she be the one to suffer? Why do they all keep interfering in her life? In desperation, she hurls the bottle at father, shouting as it shatters against him. The blood splatters onto his skin, and to Chea's shock, he recoils in pain as it starts to burn. Father screams in pain, demanding to know what is happening. Chaya takes the opportunity to run, but before she can get far, he uses his vampire abilities to hurl her into a wall. However, he soon realizes that his wound isn't healing, and his strength is beginning to fade, realizing it must be because of his blood. He grabs Gurim and begins dragging him away. Chaya watches helplessly, desperately trying to think of something, but she has no strength left to even lift a finger. She turns to Yunsu, calling his name, urging him to wake up, but he doesn't move. Then an idea forms in her mind. She hates the thought of it, but for Gurim's sake, she has no choice. Biting down on her lip, she tells herself that her life is ruined. And the one who ruined it, Yunsu, suddenly opens his eyes the moment a drop of her blood falls. In an instant, he is before her. She looks at him with disdain and tells him that she truly hates him. He simply replies that he knows, revealing his fangs. But as he sees the fear in her eyes, he hesitates. Instead of biting, he licks the blood instead. She tells him to go and get Gurim back. Yunsu turns to father, grabs him by the hair, and demands to know where he thinks he's going. Seeing that father has no strength left, Yunsu smirks in excitement, saying that he can't believe this day has finally come. Ever since he became a vampire, he has wanted to end father. Just as he's about to strike, Rose steps in, urgently telling him to stop. Before he can react, she takes Gurim hostage, threatening Yunsu. Confused, he asks why she's doing this. If she hates father as much as he does, shouldn't she be helping them instead? But Rose ignores his question and demands confirmation. Was Gurim really Seon's child? She reveals that she was the one who saved Yunsu back then by pleading with father and secretly saved Seon as well. Now she demands they repay her by letting father go, saying that he was the only one by her side for hundreds of years. If they refuse, she threatens to do the same to Gurim. Yunsu clenches his fists but ultimately steps back. Rose quickly runs to father and vanishes with him. Yunsu stands in frustration, regretting that he let this opportunity slip away. He turns to Gurim, then, realizing his wound is still deep. Without hesitation, he starts walking toward Chaya. Sitting in front of her, he looks into her eyes and quietly asks, "Can I have it?" Before she can say anything, he grabs her face and kisses her. Chaya was utterly confused by what was happening. She pushed Yunsu away, telling him to stop and asking if he was out of his mind. However, Yunsu, unfazed, asked for just a little more, teasing her by saying he would do it in a good way, before continuing. Just then, Gurim stood up and asked what they were doing. Panicked, Chaya quickly shoved Yunsu away, exclaiming that a child was watching. Yunsu scoffed, remarking, "Which part of him looks like a child?" In the next scene, Yunsu and Gurim were at the mansion, setting up their next move. Yunsu explained that father would not stop pursuing Gurim, so they needed to leave quickly, adding that they didn't have much time. Though he wasn't entirely sure why father was in such a weakened state, the fact remained that they wouldn't have made it out otherwise. This was the perfect moment for them to escape. Gurim, however, insisted that they needed to go to the church, explaining that he had asked Han Chaya to meet them there. When Yunsu looked surprised, Gurim clarified that all three of them were in danger. If only the two of them ran away, Chaya would be left behind and they would go after her. She had saved his life, and for that reason, he wanted to take her with them. Yunsu, still skeptical, told him that if she wasn't there by 9 o'clock, they would leave without her. By the time the clock struck 9 at the church, Yunsu asked Gurim if he was sure Chaya was coming. Gurim hesitated before replying that she had only said she would think about it. However, in his mind, he recalled that she had actually just told them to get lost. Yunsu sighed, commenting that it didn't seem like she was coming. He then jokingly suggested that Gurim should try praying for it instead. Seeing Gurim's now grown-up face, Yunsu was suddenly reminded of Son. Back then, it had actually been Seon who had suggested they go to church. Yunsu had dismissed the idea, calling it a waste of time, and asked what Son even prayed for. Son had simply replied that he prayed to be forgiven. At the time, Yunsu had found it ridiculous, but now, not so much. Returning to the present, Yunsu asked again why Gurim was so intent on bringing Han Chea along. Gurim reiterated that it was because she had saved his life. Yunsu was puzzled. When exactly had that happened? Then, suddenly, he remembered. Gurim had grown after drinking human blood. Realization struck, and Yunsu asked if it had been Chea's blood. Gurim confirmed it with a simple yes. Yunsu frowned. And she just let you? Again, Gurim answered yes. Yunsu narrowed his eyes. Without any conditions? This time, Gurim cut him off, telling him to just stop asking. Yunsu fell silent, lost in thought. Why does he feel so... But before he could finish the thought, his attention snapped back as Chea entered the church. Earlier, Gurim had told Chea that they would be leaving. In response, Chea had scoffed, saying that she was finally free from dealing with them and told him never to seek her out again. However, Gurim stopped her, asking her to come with them, adding that she was in danger too. Chea dismissed his concern, stating that all she wanted was for vampires to disappear from her life before turning to leave. Despite this, Gurim called after her, telling her that he would wait for her at the church until 9 p.m. Later at home, Chea was utterly exhausted. As she tried to rest, her phone rang. It was her sister, Chasen. Chea picked up with little patience, immediately asking what she wanted. Chasen replied that she was worried about her, but Chea cut her off, telling her to get to the point. Chasen then asked if she was still involved with Yunsu, suggesting that he should be introduced to their uncle for investment opportunities. As soon as Chea heard this, her anger flared, and she threw her phone aside in frustration. And now, she had come to the church. Gurim, seeing her arrival, approached her excitedly, But Chea quickly clarified that she hadn't made a decision yet. She just wanted to hear the plan. As she spoke, Gurim caught the scent of blood from her. He stepped outside, leaving her to talk to Park Yunsu instead. Chea sighed, thinking about how much she hated this, but she went to Yunsu anyway. Yunsu glanced at her and remarked that he hadn't expected her to come. Chea replied flatly, "One does what it takes to survive." Amused, Yunsu commented on her strong will to live. She met his gaze and said, "That's because there's always someone who wants me dead, and I refuse to give in." Yunsu smirked. "Are you sure you're not in danger by staying with me?" Chea remained unfazed. "I've thought it through. Gurim won't leave without me. It seems like he depends on me more than he does on you." Then she added seriously, "Promise me you won't let me die." Yunsu agreed, but with one condition. "Whenever I'm hungry, you have to give me your blood." Chea immediately shoved him away. "Are you trying to turn me into a blood bag?" Yunsu simply replied that it was a reasonable arrangement. After a brief pause, Chea considered it. Finally, she sighed and agreed. Yunsu then made an interactive promise. If she ever stopped giving him blood, the deal would be void. With that, the two of them left together. As they walked, Chea thought about the metaphorical rope Yunsu had thrown at her. There was no reason not to grab it. Meanwhile, Yunsu simply smiled as he closed the church door behind them. In their new house, Yunsu and Chea were bickering over the dirty dishes. Chea insisted she would do them later, but Yunsu argued that she should wash them immediately after eating. She complained that they didn't even eat real food, so why did it matter? Yunsu replied that he still needed to drink water and questioned how she could just walk past the mess without caring. Gurim, witnessing their argument, sighed and asked if they were fighting again. Both of them turned to him instantly, and Chea called him over. Gurim hesitated, thinking he should have just left quietly. When Chea asked him to pick a side, he chose her, finding the whole situation childish. Chea smirked and mocked Yunsu, who, irritated, asked why Gurim was siding with her, calling him Park Gurim. Gurim nonchalantly responded that he wasn't a park. Chea then remarked that if it bothered Yunsu so much, he could just wash the dishes himself. Yunsu scoffed at the idea, but in the end he angrily did them while muttering complaints about both Chea and Gurim. Meanwhile, Gurim asked Chea to go swimming. It had been 10 days since they arrived on the island, yet she still didn't even know exactly where they were. Every day felt the same, with nothing to do, and she wondered if she could keep living like this. While lost in thought, she accidentally scratched her elbow on a rock. As soon as Gurim noticed her blood, his eyes turned yellow, and he quickly left in a panic. Chea sighed, wondering why they both acted like idiots when it came to her blood. One ran away, while the other... She stopped her thoughts there. Lying down, she recalled how Yunsu had asked her about how father was injured, but she hadn't told him. She decided to keep it to herself in case Yunsu broke his promise, since she still didn't trust him completely. Eventually, she fell asleep there. But when she opened her eyes again, she saw Yunsu staring down at her from above. She asked how he found her, and he simply said it was because of her blood. When she turned to look at him, she noticed his eyes had turned yellow. Without warning, she splashed water at him. Yunsu asked what she was doing. She replied that she was waking him up since he always lost control when he saw her blood. Yunsu asked if she would prefer that he just bite her instead. In response, she pushed him into the water and walked away, saying she would give him blood when he was hungry, but not whenever he wanted. Yunsu sat there in the water, thinking about what she had just said. Later that night, while Chea was sleeping in her room, she suddenly opened her eyes slightly and saw Yunsu sitting in front of her bed. Startled, she asked what he was doing there. He calmly replied that he was there for his meal. Chea asked what he meant, and Yunsu reminded her that she had told him to come when he was hungry. Then he grabbed her by the face and pushed her down. Chea remembered that Gurim had told her vampires only needed to feed once a month, but it had only been 10 days since Yunsu last drank. As he leaned closer, she quickly pulled out a knife from under her pillow. Yunsu easily stopped her and asked when she even got it, and she replied that she couldn't live with him without something to protect herself. Yunsu told her the knife was useless and mockingly told her to go ahead and try. Then he threw it away, saying that this was what they had agreed on. But Chaya argued that it didn't seem like he was actually hungry. He was just doing this because he wanted to. Yunsu told her it was because he had smelled her blood that he became hungry. Chaya was startled by how serious he sounded. She told him to wait, then cursed at him. He simply asked, "And?" leaving her shocked at his shamelessness. Then she asked for a drink, saying she couldn't do this sober and that it would make her less afraid of him biting her. He agreed, and she asked for the glass to be filled to the brim. As they sat together, Chaya asked if vampires got drunk when they drank. Yunsu told her no, and she got annoyed that she would be the only one getting drunk. He pointed out that it would be dangerous for her if he got drunk, and she agreed. Then, before drinking, she warned him not to suck all her blood out. After that, she gulped down the whole glass in one go and immediately got drunk. In her drunken state, she called Yunsu and told him to drop dead. He stood up, saying that he wasn't going to wait any longer, but Chaya said that she found it funny that he had actually been waiting for her. This surprised Yunsu himself, and he stopped. Then she turned her face toward him and asked why he was staring at her. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a gray-haired man was talking on the phone. A voice on the other end asked if he had found them. The man replied that it wasn't easy to find someone who didn't want to be found, but told the caller to have faith in him. Then his face was revealed. He was talking to Father. Father asked what he had found so far, and the man replied that it might take some time, as they seemed to be very skilled at staying hidden. Father ordered him to report anything he discovered immediately, and not to keep him waiting. Then he turned to Rose and asked if she was upset that he had sent Leo to Korea. She replied that she didn't care. While shaving, Father accidentally nicked his cheek, and to his annoyance, the wound didn't heal immediately. Rose told him to focus on healing his body and then left. Meanwhile, in Korea, at Yunsu's mansion, Leo, the silver-haired man, wondered who could have done this to Father. If there was a way to hurt Father, he wanted to know about it. But first, he needed to find Park Yunsu. However, no matter how much he searched, he couldn't find a single trace of him in the house. It was as if Yunsu was living like someone who could disappear at any moment. Back in Chaya's room, Yunsu stared at her, thinking to himself that this wasn't about looking at her. She was simply a way for them to avoid leaving bodies behind. There was no need for hypnotizing or kidnapping. She was a living blood supply. He smirked, realizing that for a vampire in hiding, this was the most important thing, and she was exactly that. Chaya finished the rest of the wine and walked over to Yunsu. She told him that she was ready. As she stood very close to him, he assumed she was going to kiss him like last time, and remarked that she was really drunk. He thought to himself that it wasn't a problem and leaned in. When he kissed her, she tried to say something, but he didn't care and kept going. Then she pushed him back slightly and told him that she had agreed to let him take her blood. But what was he doing right now? Chaya went to her bed, leaving Yunsu standing there, surprised by his own thoughts. She told him to get it over with, calling him a stupid mosquito. Yunsu stared at her, thinking that there was just no way it could be true. He stepped closer, convincing himself that he only wanted her blood and that she was just amusing to mess with. As he scratched her neck and began to drink, he kept telling himself that this was the only reason, that he shouldn't think about anything else, that he didn't have any feelings. But then suddenly he saw rose vines wrapping around his leg, slowly creeping up toward his neck. Chaya called out for him to stop, and the vision vanished. Yunsu was left bewildered. What was that hallucination just now? Why had he seen it? He turned his head toward Chaya, and as he looked at her, a realization struck him. He stared at her in silence, finally understanding why he'd been so reluctant to let her get close. He hadn't wanted to admit it, but it wasn't just her blood that he wanted. It was Han Chaya herself. Both of them woke up exhausted the next day, weighed down by memories of the previous night. Chaya was dying from embarrassment, though she couldn't remember everything clearly. She wondered what exactly she had done that even Yunsu had looked surprised. The thought of him knowing something he could use against her made her even more frustrated. Deciding she couldn't face him, she resolved to stay in her room all day. However, later in the evening, she finally stepped out and ran into Gurim. She asked him where Park Yunsu was, and Gurim replied that he hadn't come out of his room at all. Chea thought to herself that this was good. Then Gurim suddenly asked if she had been drinking last night. When she admitted that she had, he looked surprised and asked if it had been with Yunsu. He then remarked that it must have been tough for Yunsu since she acts like a dog whenever she drinks. Chea immediately became flustered by his comment. She walked into the kitchen, only to find Yunsu already standing there. Her face turned completely red at the sight of him. Embarrassed and frustrated, she shot Gurim a glare, demanding an explanation, but he simply shrugged and remarked that maybe Yunsu had gotten thirsty. Yunsu, appearing perfectly calm, asked what they had been talking about. Gurim, ignoring Chea's reaction, casually asked Yunsu if something had happened last night. Yunsu glanced at Chea. She hesitated before asking what exactly she had done. Noticing that she didn't remember, Yunsu simply smiled and said, "Nothing." Chea froze. That answer only confirmed her worst fears. She had definitely done something. She sat down and asked Gurim to make her some food, but he refused, saying that she should do things for herself sometimes. She reminded him that he was the one who banned her from cooking in the first place because she was terrible at it. Gurim, however, turned to Yunsu and suggested that he should be the one to help her. Since he was getting blood from her, he should at least have some conscience. Without giving them a chance to argue, Gurim quickly left, leaving the two of them alone in the kitchen. But Gurim had another reason for leaving them alone. He wanted to secretly enter Yunsu's room. Once inside, he accessed the computer and began searching for information on Rose Gray. Gurim discovered that Rose was a famous painter. Realizing that he needed to meet her to gather more information, he decided to send her an email. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Yunsu told Chea not to bother helping since she was of no use anyway. Despite his dismissive words, he couldn't help but glare at her. When their eyes met, an awkward tension settled between them, and they both quickly looked away. Chea felt irritated by the whole situation, while Yunsu found himself even more unsettled. He couldn't shake the feeling and, despite himself, glanced at her again. As she walked past him, their arms brushed against each other. Without thinking, Yunsu suddenly grabbed her, his mind racing. What am I even doing? He questioned whether this was just instinct or if something within him had changed. Chea immediately noticed that his eyes had turned yellow. Just then, Gurim returned, and Yunsu quickly released her before walking off without a word. Still confused, Chea turned to Gurim and asked if he could smell any blood on her. When he said no, she frowned and muttered that she thought Park Yunsu was losing his mind. Elsewhere, Rose saw Gurim's email and, smiling, commented that it was silly. Rose replied to the email asking, "Is that you?" hoping it wasn't Gurim. Just then, Leo entered her room, playfully asking if she had missed him. He put a pendant around her neck, while casually inquiring if she was close to Yunsu. Rose replied that it was long before Leo was even born, so there was no point in asking her. She had no idea where they were. Leaning in closer, Leo asked why she had changed when she used to be so sweet to him. She simply responded that it was because she hadn't expected him to grow up like this. Leo, unfazed, just grinned and remarked that he had grown up to be handsome. Before leaving, he asked her out on a date, but she refused. After he left, Rose checked her email again. Gurim had confirmed his identity and asked to meet her. Meanwhile, Gurim was quietly sneaking out of Yunsu's room when he ran into Yunsu himself. Yunsu immediately demanded to know what he was doing in his bedroom. In response, Gurim pulled out a button, father's button, and said that he had found something. Without waiting for a response, he left, stating that he was taking it with him. The next day, Gurim found himself troubled. He knew he wouldn't be able to sneak into Yunsu's room again after last night's incident. He considered asking Yunsu to go out, but he knew that Yunsu wouldn't listen to him. As he observed Yunsu and Chea interacting, he initially assumed they were about to bicker again. However, he soon noticed something different this time. Shocked, he realized that Yunsu's behavior toward her had changed. At first, Gurim wondered when Yunsu and Chea had become so close, but he quickly realized that the one who had changed was Park Yunsu. He looked oddly pleased, even when Chea was cursing at him. As she walked away, still cursing, Gurim couldn't help but think that she was right. Yunsu had really lost his mind. Later, Gurim casually brought up the topic and asked Yunsu if he liked Chea. Yunsu didn't reply at first, and Gurim figured that, of course, it wouldn't be easy for someone as egotistical as Park Yunsu to admit it. But then, to his surprise, Yunsu simply smiled and asked, "Why?" Gurim was taken aback. He hadn't denied it. He told Yunsu that lately, he couldn't seem to keep his hands off Chea and stared at her like crazy. Yunsu thought for a moment before asking, "Am I not allowed to?" Gurim was completely shocked and asked if he was being serious, but Yunsu dismissed him, saying it was none of his concern, before walking away. Gurim smirked to himself, thinking that he had just gathered some valuable information. Next, he went to Chea and asked what she thought of Yunsu. As expected, she immediately said that she hated living with him. So Gurim asked if she wanted to go out, but she refused, saying that aside from Yunsu, everything else about the island was perfect. He then told her to ask Yunsu to go out since he needed to leave. Chea agreed, but only if she got paid for it. Gurim was dumbfounded. She insisted that she wouldn't do it for free, and he muttered that she was just as crazy as Yunsu before reluctantly agreeing. That night, Chea went to Yunsu and told him that she wanted to go out. He bluntly refused. He reminded her that she already knew what would happen if they went outside. She then offered to do all the dishes, but it didn't work. Thinking for a moment, she pointed to the scratch on her neck, reminding him that she had given him blood. Yunsu's face immediately turned red. The moment she pointed it out, he quickly turned his head away and agreed to her request. The next day, Gurim knocked on Chea's door, trying to wake her up since they had plans to go out. She walked out of her room, but headed straight to Yunsu. Standing in front of him, she told him that he annoyed her so much, then immediately fainted. She had come down with a fever. Gurim told her to eat, saying that Yunsu had declared they wouldn't go out unless she finished her meal. Chea was surprised and muttered that she was sick because of him. Then she hesitated before asking Gurim if it was really okay to go out, considering Yunsu didn't like it. He replied that they had to leave sooner or later. He couldn't live there forever. After Gurim left, Chea thought to herself that she couldn't stay there forever either. She wondered if her sister and grandmother even realized she was missing from Korea. Would they even care if she died? Would they actually be happy about it? As she drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of a time when she was a child and had a fever. In her dream, her grandmother was trying to choke her. Meanwhile, Yunsu entered her room and saw her struggling in her sleep. She was gripping her own neck, gasping for help. He wondered what kind of dream she was having. Was someone choking her? Could it be him? It was possible. After all, he had tried to harm her in the past. But then she muttered the word grandma, and he realized it wasn't him. It was her own family. As he moved closer, she suddenly grabbed onto his shirt in her sleep. Tears ran down her face as she mumbled, "I will live." Hearing this triggered an old memory for Yunsu. He remembered the day father burned everything down. His mother had been trapped under the collapsing debris and she had told him to go. But he had refused. He had insisted that he would beg father to save her, just like he had saved him by turning him into a vampire. But his mother had refused. She had told him she would rather die than live as a monster. Yunsu had hesitated. Then, what about me? His mother had looked at him. She had told him to leave. You need to live. Promise me. You must live. Now in the present, Yunsu looked down at Chea. He slowly reached out and took her hand, holding it firmly. The next day, they went out into the city. Chea felt a little anxious, realizing she couldn't speak the language. Meanwhile, Gurim told Yunsu that he was heading to the library to look something up. Yunsu, curious about what it was, offered to go with him. Gurim immediately elbowed Chea, signaling her to act. She grabbed Yunsu's arm and asked him to go somewhere with her. He was about to refuse, saying she should go with Gurim instead, but before he could finish his sentence, Gurim had already disappeared. Turning back to her, Yunsu narrowed his eyes. "It seems you made a deal with Gurim." Chaya brushed it off, pretending not to know what he was talking about. Yunsu let it go, thinking that at the very least he could still sense Gurim's presence. The two of them ended up at a cafe. Yunsu, smirking, playfully commented, "If you wanted to go on a date with me, you should have just said so sooner." He added that he liked it there. Chaya scoffed, thinking that this was all just for the money. She didn't even like sweets, yet here she was, pretending to eat them. She then offered some to Yunsu, but he refused. However, when he noticed a bit of chocolate on her lips, he instinctively wiped it off. As he did, he asked, "Why do you need money? I know Gurim already paid you." She replied, "Once everything goes back to normal, I'll have to survive without the two of you." She threw his hand away and added, "I need to start saving up." Then, as if speaking to herself, she muttered, "How long does it have to be like this?" Yunsu paused. The word struck something in him. "Yes. How long will it be like this?" He licked his finger before looking at her intently. "What if it doesn't end?" he asked. "What if I want to keep being like this?" Chea was taken aback. Before she could respond, Yunsu leaned in closer and asked, "Do you want to be a vampire?" Meanwhile, somewhere else, Father was inquiring Leo about the situation. Leo, smirking, told him to be patient. "That boy's like you," he added, "a half-blood. They're fragile. One mistake and he will fall." At that very moment in the library, just behind Gurim, a man's hand got cut slightly. Gurim's eyes immediately turned yellow in response. Back at the cafe, Chea was surprised by Yunsu's question and wondered what he would even gain from it. He told her to stay still and leaned in for a kiss. She backed away, but he bit her lip instead. Frustrated, she forcefully pushed him back and angrily asked what he was doing. She reminded him that everything she had to endure was because of his kind, and yet he had the audacity to ask her this, adding that she will never become a monster like him. Then, noticing Yunsu's saddened expression, she hesitated before asking again why he had asked if she wanted to be a vampire. He did not reply. Remembering his changed behavior recently, Chea suddenly realized something she could hardly believe and asked if he had feelings for her. But at that moment, Yunsu sensed something had happened to Gurim and rushed out of the cafe. Gurim's hand was covered in blood, and when Yunsu reached him, he teleported them to an alley. Yunsu immediately asked what had happened and whose blood it was, but Gurim was trembling. Yunsu told him to wait while he went to the library to take care of any witnesses. He was about to leave when Chea arrived, looking worried. Yunsu glanced at the cut on her lips, and just as he feared, Gurim suddenly attacked her. Yunsu stopped him in time and knocks him out. After assessing the situation, Yunsu decided that they needed to head home first. When Gurim regained consciousness, Yunsu was sitting in front of him. Yunsu told him that they had to leave, as it was too dangerous to stay there any longer. Gurim, still shaken, asked if he should have ended that guy, and Yunsu told him yes. That was the way they survived. He thought to himself that he should have gone back to deal with the victim and witnesses. Now, it wouldn't take much time for Father to find them. Gurim suddenly confessed that he had a terrible thought, that one day he might harm Chea. He reminded Yunsu that they needed blood, and Chea, who lived with them, was human. Overwhelmed, he started crying, blaming himself for everything. Yunsu comforted him, assuring him that none of this was his fault. Everything that had happened in his life had never been his choice. It was all because of someone else's actions and decisions. As Gurim sobbed, Yunsu pulled him into a hug, though deep down he thought to himself that everything was his fault. Before he ruined things even further, he needed to let Chea go. He told Gurim not to worry, promising that all of this would be over soon. Meanwhile, Leo had already gathered information on them. Smirking, he told Rose that he was heading out for a hunt. Back at their house, Chea was searching for Gurim. She ran into Yunsu in the kitchen, feeling a little awkward, but nonetheless asked him where Gurim was. Yunsu replied that since it was too dangerous, he had sent Gurim ahead. As the realization sank in, she understood that now, the two of them were the only ones left in the house. Yunsu glanced at her and casually asked if they should eat first. Chea sat at the table while Yunsu cooked. He was about to say something, but she cut him off, reminding him of their interactive promise. He asked if she wanted to end it, and she replied that she wanted to go back to Korea. Yunsu served her steak and wine, then said he would let her go. She had to drink this blood. Without hesitation, she drank it, confidently stating that she wouldn't be fooled again. As expected, it was just wine. Yunsu then told her that she could leave on one condition. She first traveled with him to another country without asking any questions. She accepted and asked when they would leave. He told her, soon. Later, Chaya was walking alone on the beach, deep in thought. If she had known Gurim was going to leave, she would have told him that his blood could harm father. Then another thought struck her. It was strange that Yunsu let Gurim go when he never left him alone. Inside the house, Yunsu sat by the piano, feeling frustrated. This was what he wanted, so why was he so unsettled by Chea's words? Suddenly, she came running in and demanded to know why he let Gurim go alone. If they were in danger here, what was he waiting for? Yunsu looked at her and asked if she was scared, telling her not to worry, but then he added that she wouldn't believe him even if he said so. It's because it's you, she replied. Without warning, Yunsu grabbed her by the waist and lifted her onto the piano. Leaning in closer, he told her to say with her own mouth, that she wanted him to protect her, that she wanted him to stay with her, but Chaya only smirked and shoved his hands away. She told him that she knew what was going on in his head. Then, meeting his gaze, she reminded him that it wasn't her who wanted this, it was him. Grabbing his collar, she pulled him closer and whispered, "So shouldn't you be the one asking me to stay?" To Chea's surprise, Yunsu grabs her hand and kisses it, asking if he can have her. She quickly pulls her hand back and asks if this is some kind of joke. She tells him that if he truly wanted her, he should have treated her better. But now, he only regrets it. Then she shoves him away, calling him a jerk. She reminds him that he pushed her to the edge of a cliff every chance he got, toyed with her life, and used her as a pawn. But now he's suddenly saying he likes her? Yunsu pulls her in closer and asks, "Why can't I like you now?" before adding, "I know you'll never like me." Chea struggles to break free from his grip, and in the process, her cheek gets scratched. She steps back, noticing Yunsu's eyes turning yellow. Narrowing her eyes, she asks if he wants her blood, mocking that he loves her blood and that it looks like he's losing his mind because of it. Suddenly, Yunsu moves in even closer, momentarily imagining himself kissing her. Chaya tenses and orders him to back off, but instead, he simply holds her, resting his head on her shoulder. Whatever he's feeling right now, she tells him he better resist it. He lifts his gaze, looking at her intently. "If only you knew how hard I've been trying." Then, wiping the blood from her cheek, he softly says, "Let's end all this." Without warning, he smears the blood onto her neck before turning and walking away. In the next scene, Leo arrives at their hideout only to find that they had already left. On the table, Yunsu had deliberately left papers for a cruise ship, as if inviting Leo to come after them. On the cruise, Chaya and Yunsu were together. He asked her why she wasn't going inside the room, to which she replied that she didn't want to be alone in a room with him. He assured her that he wasn't going to do anything, but she didn't believe him. Chaya then questioned why they were traveling on a cruise if they were supposed to be discreet, but Yunsu didn't respond. Frustrated, she left. But no matter where she went, Yunsu kept following her. While alone in the restroom, she suddenly heard someone calling for Gurim. She quickly looked around, but no one was there. Uneasy, she rushed back to Yunsu. Later, as they were getting off the cruise, she told herself that she must have misheard it due to her anxiety, and that it was all Park Yunsu's fault. Meanwhile, Yunsu told her that it was time for them to go their separate ways and told her to take care of herself. Chaya told herself that she didn't regret it, not even a little. From the beginning, they were never meant to be together. Looking away, she told him goodbye, adding that it was not nice knowing him. As she stepped forward, she was pushed by the crowd. Instinctively, she reached out toward Yunsu, but before he could react, he vanished into thin air. For a moment, she asked herself, who was I even trying to reach? What was I expecting? There was no one by her side. Trying to distract herself, she thought about how, with the amount of money Yunsu had given her, she could live a better life. But suddenly, someone grabbed her hand. It was Leo. smiling as if he was pleased to have caught her. Leo was shocked to realize that Chea was actually a human and not a half-blood. Chea tried to run, but he caught her and teleported away with her. Demanding to know Gurim's whereabouts, he pressed her for answers, but Chea had no idea. She attempted to escape again, but this time, he attacked her. At that same moment, elsewhere, Park Yunsu suddenly caught the scent of her blood. He had expected Leo to come after him, so why had he gone for Chea instead? Yunsu rushed to the scene, only to find traces of her blood on the ground. A deep sense of worry settled over him. The mere thought of her being dead was something he couldn't even bear to imagine. In the next scene, Yunsu asked Chea if she had slept well. Chea was lying on a sofa, her head pounding and her entire body aching. With a smile, he asked where Gurim had gone, but instead of answering, she grabbed his hand and asked if he was really Park Yunsu. She began rambling, insisting that she obviously didn't know anything. The man in front of her wasn't actually Yunsu. It was Leo, using hallucinations on her. At first, he had assumed she was Yunsu's lover, but her reaction suggested otherwise. To confirm, he leaned in close, but she immediately pushed him away, asking if he had lost his mind, claiming that he liked her. Now, Leo understood the whole situation. Dropping the illusion, he revealed his real face to her. He then took off her jacket to stop the bleeding, as the scent of her blood was too strong. Meanwhile, Yunsu was rushing toward them. Chea, however, noticed something strange. Leo didn't seem affected by the scent of her blood at all. After locking her inside a room, he spread water mixed with her blood throughout the house. When Yunsu finally arrived, the entire place was drenched in the overwhelming scent of Chea's blood. He thought to himself that if Leo was doing this on purpose to lure him in, then he would gladly accept the offer. The scent inside the house was suffocating. Yunsu found Chea lying on the floor. As he held her, she weakly told him that Leo had gone after Gurim and that they needed to go to him immediately. At the same time, she pleaded with him not to leave her behind, reminding him that he had said he liked her. Yunsu hugged her tightly, assuring her that he would never leave her. But as she hugged him back, he suddenly realized this wasn't Han Chea. He remarked that he had almost been tricked. His voice turned cold as he warned the imposter not to call his name with that face unless they wanted him to peel it off. Without hesitation, he struck Leo across the face and demanded to know where Han Chea was and why he was wearing her clothes. Leo briefly reverted to Chea's face before using the distraction to launch an attack with a weapon coated in his own blood. But Yunsu easily dodged, delivering a powerful kick. He grabbed Leo by the neck, his grip tightening as he coldly declared, "If Han Chea is dead, then you must die too." Leo, still gasping for air, offered to tell him where she was, warning that he should hurry. She might have already lost too much blood. But in exchange, he demanded a promise from Yunsu. In the room where Chea was tied up, she managed to free her hands, but the door remained locked from the outside. Meanwhile, Yunsu was on his way to her, but the overwhelming scent of blood made it difficult to track her. A sinking fear settled in his chest as he considered the worst-case scenario. On the other hand, Chea, believing these to be her final moments, couldn't help but think of Yunsu. She convinced herself that he had finally abandoned her. But just then, Yunsu found her. However, instead of relief, Chea instinctively tried to push him away, fearing that it was Leo once again using hallucinations on her. When Yunsu attempted to assure her that it was really him, she stubbornly argued that Yunsu would never come to save her. "Don't cry," he told her softly. At that moment, a few tears fell from his eyes before he even realized it. Seeing this, Chea finally understood it was truly Park Yunsu. Later, a doctor arrived to check on her. Yunsu stayed by her side until morning, watching over her in silence. But Chea refused to even look at him. With a heavy heart, Yunsu finally left her room and made his way down to the basement, where Leo was chained up, waiting. The promise Yunsu made in exchange for finding Chea was that he wouldn't kill Leo. He had also stabbed him with a silver knife, a weapon harmful to vampires. Yunsu asked if Father had sent him after them, and Leo replied that he already knew the answer. Then, Yunsu questioned why he had gone after Chea, a human, when he had plenty of time on the cruise to identify who was human and who was a vampire. Leo claimed that he didn't know anything about Gurim and assumed he could be human, but Yunsu could tell he was lying, and that he wasn't a normal vampire either. Still, Yunsu didn't care and continued threatening him. Leo then proposed that they join forces, explaining that if he failed to contact Father for too long, Father would immediately come after them. And right now, Chaya wasn't in any condition to move. Yunsu agreed to buy some time, but first made Leo swear not to harm Han Chaya. As soon as Leo promised, a cut appeared on his hand. After that, Yunsu pulled the silver knife from Leo's stomach and ordered him to get to work quickly. He warned that while he couldn't kill him due to their agreement, he could still make him wish for death. Meanwhile, a few days earlier, Gurim had reached the place Yunsu had instructed him to go. The person waiting there to receive him was Rose. As soon as Gurim saw Rose, he immediately turned to leave, but she stopped him, saying that she had been instructed to take him with her. They went to a house, and Gurim asked if Yunsu had contacted her. She replied that he had, using Gurim's email. Realizing that Yunsu had known everything all along, Gurim wondered if he could even trust her. He then asked why they were in England, where their father lived. Rose explained that no one would suspect him to be hiding so close. She handed him a cup of animal blood, and he asked how long he had to stay there. She told him it would be until Yunsu came. As she was about to leave, she casually began changing her clothes in front of him, making Gurim uncomfortable. She simply joked about it, unfazed. Noticing that he hadn't touched the cup, she took a sip from it herself to prove it wasn't poisoned and told him to drink it. Gurim thought to himself that she was even worse than Park Yunsu. Meanwhile, Yunsu was in the bathtub, smoking, deep in thought and worried about the current situation. Outside, he ran into Leo, who asked if he was heading to the second floor to see Chea. Yunsu warned him that if he so much as stepped on the second floor, he would be sent straight back to the basement. Leo reminded him that it was actually his house, but Yunsu ignored him and walked away. Upstairs, Chea was still in bed, silently but angrily staring at him. She opened her mouth only to curse him. Yunsu asked about her health, but she told him to stop pretending to be nice, calling it disgusting. She went on, saying that he had always been like this, using her and then acting as if nothing had happened. She questioned whether he even came to rescue her, wondering why he would anyway. Suddenly, tears welled up in her eyes as she told him that she had almost died, adding that she didn't need him either. Yunsu simply held her hand and apologized, telling her not to cry. He helped her sit up to eat, rubbing his cheek against hers, teasing her even in this moment. Chaya refused to eat from his hands, but he threatened to feed her with his mouth instead, making her give in. As she sat in bed, she wondered how serious Yunsu could really be about her. She told him that she didn't trust him and would leave him, but Yunsu replied that it didn't matter. Then, with a serious expression, she told him that she would end him one day. Yunsu simply smiled and said, "Okay," before playfully telling her to try it. That night, Chaya woke up to go to the restroom. Still weak, she stumbled while opening the door, only to find Leo standing right in front of her. Chaya got scared and tried to back away from Leo, who was moving toward her. Suddenly, Yunsu appeared between them. She turned to Yunsu and demanded to know why this madman was here, to which Leo casually replied that it was actually his house. Without hesitation, Yunsu grabbed Leo by the neck and ordered him to go downstairs. Leo left, and as Yunsu turned back to Chea, she asked if he was acquainted with him. Yunsu tried to calm her down, but she snapped that she couldn't. Leo had tried to harm her. Yunsu assured her that as long as she was with him, she was safe and just needed to hold on until she got better. Chaya scoffed, commenting that she didn't understand him at all. Then she told him to take responsibility for his words, that she was safe with him. She meant it quite literally as she piggybacked on him to go to the restroom. Leo, watching the scene unfold, smirked and mocked Yunsu, saying that no other vampire like him existed, carrying her around out of fear she might fall. But when he sensed the dark aura coming from Chea, he felt slightly uneasy. Playfully, he told her not to hate him, but she simply responded by flipping him off. Afterward, Yunsu interrogated Leo about why he had gone upstairs. Leo claimed he had heard the sound of someone falling, but Yunsu cut him off and warned him not to go there again. Just then, Leo's phone started ringing. The caller was their father. Leo gave father an excuse for why he had not found them yet. Yunsu told him to do the same in the future and was about to leave when he suddenly remarked that Leo looked a lot like father. He asked if Leo was like Rose, one of father's children. Leo immediately denied it, saying that father was just a common name. But Yunsu grabbed his face and pointed out that their resemblance was excessive. Leo brushed it off, claiming that he was much more handsome than father, and walked away. For Yunsu, the place where Leo had attacked him still seemed to ache. Suddenly, Leo returned to grab his phone. Yunsu quickly straightened up, hiding any sign of pain. As Leo left again, Yunsu wondered if he had noticed and told himself that he needed to be more careful. The next day, Yunsu was helping Chea get dressed. She abruptly stopped him and told him he was banned from touching her. And in response, he grabbed her hand, but she immediately flicked it away, repeating that he was not allowed to touch her. Annoyed, Yunsu simply replied, "No." She cursed at him, but he only smiled. Frustrated, Chea accused him of being selfish, to which he nonchalantly responded, "Of course I am." She pushed him out of the room and told him to stop touching his ears to hers. Left outside, Yunsu wondered just how many times he had actually done that. Leo was talking to Rose on the phone when he heard a man's voice on her end. It frustrated him, making him want to return as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Yunsu and Chaya were bickering as usual. Leo thought to himself that getting any information out of Yunsu was impossible, and it seemed like Chaya truly didn't know anything either. However, from their conversation, it was clear that she was close to him. That night, when Chaya was alone, Leo suddenly grabbed her by the mouth to prevent her from screaming and whispered that he just wanted to have a little talk. Leo asks her where Gurim is, but she shakes her head, indicating she doesn't know. Switching tactics, he asks if she really believes in Park Yunsu, questioning whether Yunsu told her that they don't know each other. Chaya is caught off guard by this, and Leo continues, saying that Yunsu never tells her anything and has probably betrayed her before. However, Chaya firmly replies that she doesn't trust Leo and would still choose Yunsu over him. Leo sighs and tells her that humans and vampires never work out. He describes Yunsu as a fickle man, warning her that once he grows tired of her, he might be the one to take her life. Wouldn't it be better, he suggests, to get away before that happens? Chaya narrows her eyes and asks what exactly he's proposing. Leo tells her that he can help her escape this situation and even erase her memories, but in exchange, she must get Gurim's location from Yunsu. As he turns to leave, he tells her to think about it, but just then, Yunsu appears. He immediately asks Chaya if she's okay. Keeping a straight face, she simply replies that it's no big deal and walks away. Yunsu is left utterly confused as he watches her leave. Meanwhile, Chaya shakes her conversation with Leo from her mind. At the same time, Yunsu is troubled by her sudden shift in behavior. On top of that, he is starving, and the thirst is beginning to take over his mind. His wound was also aching, now covered in a spreading black color that slowly crept across his body. Dark stripes began to coil around him, constricting tighter until his entire body was swallowed by the darkness. Suddenly, his wound started bleeding again, and an overwhelming hunger consumed him. In his daze, he saw a hand with a fresh cut on it, an all too familiar sight. Without thinking, he licked the wound and then moved toward the person's neck. Sinking his fangs in, he tasted blood until a voice called his name, Yunsu. Che's voice cut through the darkness clouding his mind. In an instant, reality snapped back into focus. Underneath him, Che looked up and asked, "Were you trying to kill me just now?" Yunsu froze, horrified by what he had just done. He tries to explain to her that this isn't who he really is, but Chea refuses to listen. Instead, she tells him that this is exactly who he is, that he never loved her, only her blood. Frustrated, Yunsu forcefully kisses her, but she shoves him away, her voice sharp as she accuses him of lying about his feelings. She then asks if he was the one who scratched her hand before coldly ordering him to leave. Anger boiling inside him, Yunsu immediately goes after Leo, grabbing him and demanding to know what he did. But Leo remains silent, refusing to confess. Enraged, Yunsu orders him to leave the house. Sensing the danger, Leo flees. With his wound worsening and hunger gnawing at him, Yunsu realizes he needs to hunt and leaves as well. Meanwhile, in another place, Rose explains to Gurim about half-bloods, revealing that they possess special abilities. One of them, she says, can inflict powerful hallucinations on vampires, illusions so strong they can destroy them from within. Back at Leo's house, Chea was contemplating an escape when she suddenly felt a presence behind her. A homeless-looking man attacked her, causing her to injure her ankle. Just then, Leo stepped in and stopped the man. Shortly after, Yunsu arrived at the scene. In front of them, Leo attacked the man and then mockingly tossed him toward Yunsu, remarking that he looked hungry and adding that otherwise he might end up biting someone he shouldn't, while holding Chea. Leo then told Chea to take a good look at Yunsu, the vampire Park Yunsu. Irritated by his words, Yunsu walked away, and Leo took Chea back to her room. Leo's ability to create hallucinations was the reason he survived Father's experiments, but only for as long as he remained useful. Knowing this, he had decided long ago that he would do whatever it took to survive. As he was about to leave Chea's room, she stopped him to talk and brought up his previous offer. Once again, he told her that if she gave him Gurim's location, he would help her return to her normal life and made her a promise. After hearing this, Chea agreed to the deal. The next day, Leo asked Chea how she planned to do it, and she simply replied that she would just go for it. Then she questioned why he was making her do it when he could just use his hallucinations and pretend to be her. Leo thought to himself that he would never dare to imitate her in front of him. Instead, he handed her a drug that could make vampires drunk, completely undetectable when mixed with wine. Just then, Yunsu entered the room and, seeing how close the two of them were, became slightly irritated. Leo, noticing his reaction, smirked and told Yunsu that Chea wanted to drink with him to discuss something, adding that he wanted to join as well. However, Yunsu refused and only asked Chea to come to his room. She picked up the red wine and followed him. Inside, Yunsu commented that it was good she was getting along with Leo, but asked if they weren't too close. Chea quickly dismissed it, saying that was just how Leo was. Yunsu, already jealous, frowned at the way she casually called Leo by his name. Amused, Chea mockingly asked if he wanted her to come to him instead. Yunsu ignored her teasing and got straight to the point, asking what agreement she had made with Leo. Instead of answering, Chea turned the question back on him, asking for Gurim's location. Yunsu stepped in close and told her that he would tell her if she kissed him first. Chea asked if he had lost his mind, and Yunsu replied that it was a good deal. She scoffed, saying she would rather die than kiss him. He asked what was wrong with it, since it wasn't their first time. Chea confirmed if he would really let her go after this, and then leaned in. Yunsu reminded her that this would be their last time, and she replied that she didn't care, as long as she could get rid of him. Yunsu was shocked and asked if it was impossible for her to ever love or believe him. Chea couldn't reply and kissed him, but Yunsu commented that it wasn't a proper kiss, so he kissed her again. Chea remembered the night Yunsu had attacked her and stopped him. Yunsu grabbed her face and told her that if she left, she should never come back, because if she did, he would end her. With a final goodbye, she left the room. Leo had been listening in on their conversation, but didn't hear Gurim's location. That was because Yunsu had given Chea a slip of paper with the location, instructing her to tell Leo at 9 o'clock. Leo came downstairs and asked if she had found the location. Chea replied that she had while hiding the slip behind her. She looked at the clock and asked Leo for water. Instead of fetching it, he handed her his flask and then asked if she was trying to play tricks on him. Chea didn't reply, and he told her that he had heard their conversation. He knew Yunsu hadn't given her the location. As he pushed her slightly, the slip of paper fell from her hand, but Leo managed to catch it. Chea quickly asked if he was looking for Gurim because he wanted to hurt Father. This caught his attention, and he demanded that she tell him what she knew. When Chea refused, he simply said it wasn't a problem. he would just go to Gurim himself. It was 9 o'clock now, and since Chaya was injured and couldn't run away, he decided to take her with him. The house was empty, and as he sipped from the flask, Leo warned her that if he didn't find anyone in the rooms, he would make her disappear. Chaya tried to run, but he caught her, until suddenly he found himself unable to move. Taking advantage of the moment, Chaya kicked him hard, sending him flying. She had poured the drug into his flask. Placing her foot under his chin, she looked down at the stunned Leo and smirked. "I never said I was hurt," she told him. The previous day, Yunsu had grown suspicious of Leo, realizing that he was always listening in on them and orchestrating events. Anticipating Leo's next move, he had arrived before him and warned Chaya that Leo was listening even at that very moment. He also revealed that the man who attacked her had been sent by Leo. Yunsu was certain that Leo wanted something from her, so he told her to pretend to go along with it. If she did, he promised to truly let her go. Before leaving, he marked her foot as part of their plan and then pretended to arrive late. Now Leo accused her of giving him a fake address, declaring that their deal was off. Chaya argued that when she had given him the location, Gurim had definitely been there. If he didn't believe her, he was free to go and see what happened when he broke his promise. Leo scoffed and mockingly asked if she truly trusted Park Yunsu after everything he had done. Chaya, unfazed, told him to stop acting as if he knew anything about Yunsu. Despite everything that had happened, both Chaya and Yunsu knew that they didn't truly trust each other. Yet as she ran away, it felt as if she were betraying him. Then she ran into Rose, who told her that Yunsu had asked her to take Chaya to Korea. Rose added that Yunsu wouldn't be coming with them. Upon hearing this, Chaya made a request to her. Back at the hideout, Leo recalled Rose's warning not to take humans for granted, and now he had been completely fooled. Lying in what used to be his and Rose's secret hideout, he refused to accept defeat. He couldn't just die like this. Determined, he returned to Yunsu, who was also unable to move. Once again, Leo asked how he had managed to injure Father, but Yunsu refused to tell him anything. Leo sighed and remarked that, at this rate, both of them would suffer at Father's hands. It would be better if at least one of them survived. Without hesitation, he used a silver knife, fatal to vampires, on Yunsu and took his button emblem. Outside, weakened and unable to move, he was approached by Rose. Frustrated, he accused her of lying and hiding things from him. Rose, however, simply pointed out that he had been the one to lie first. She revealed that she knew the real reason he had gone after Gurim. It wasn't because of Father's orders, but because he was searching for a way to hurt him. Leo narrowed his eyes and asked if she was siding with Father. Rose shook her head, saying that she didn't want anyone to die. Scoffing, Leo retorted that she always said she hated how he resembled Father, but in his eyes, she was the one who was more like him. Father had always known about their so-called secret hideout. They had all been played from the very beginning. A fight broke out between them, and when everyone was left covered in blood, someone else got exactly what they wanted. Father had reached Gurim and told him that he wouldn't harm him as long as he stayed with him and provided his blood. He added that the more Gurim tried to avoid him, the more others would get hurt, then casually remarked that it must have been a long time since he last heard from Yunsu. Gurim was stunned by his words, and just then Leo arrived. He told Father that he had eliminated Park Yunsu and handed over Yunsu's button as proof. Utterly terrified, Gurim could even smell Yunsu's blood on Leo. His legs gave out and he collapsed to the floor. For a brief moment, Leo considered snatching Gurim and escaping with him. However, Father seemed to notice this. Just then, Rose appeared, stopping Leo in his tracks. She knew he was no match for Father. Father gave them a choice, lose their lives or get on their knees. For now, Leo had no choice but to kneel, though he silently decided to strike when the time was right. He also thought that one day, Rose would have to make a choice too. Meanwhile, Gurim couldn't hold back his tears after hearing the news, while Yunsu, bound and helpless, was left waiting for his end. He thought about how he couldn't even clear the misunderstanding with Gurim. Then, his mind drifted to the previous day. It was the first time he had ever felt ashamed of his bloodthirst. Even now, why did he still want her so much? She had come into his life like a tide, overwhelming and inescapable. And at that moment, Chaya entered the room. Yunsu wasn't moving at all, which scared her. She quickly approached him and removed the silver knife from his body. At first, he simply stared at her in silence before finally asking, "Why did you come back?" Chaya responded that she wasn't saving him for free. She wanted something from him and demanded his promise. Yunsu, however, told her that he needed her blood first, saying that he might die before he could promise her anything. With no other choice, Chaya agreed and offered him her blood. As soon as Yunsu tasted her blood, his strength returned and he freed his hands. He reminded Chaya that he had told her if she came back, he would end her. Chaya told him to end everything and go back to the way things used to be. Yunsu mockingly asked if she really thought they could go back and what she expected him to do. Chaya told him to erase all her memories of him, shocking Yunsu. He scoffed, saying he was glad he hadn't promised her anything beforehand and that he would rather die than accept this. She reminded him that he had said he would leave her alone, but Yunsu said he had also told her not to come back, so why did she? Chaya cursed at him, asking if he forgot that she had just saved his life. He replied that he didn't care about his messed up life, but stopped midway, remembering that he had just been regretting everything minutes ago. Chaya told him that if she hadn't come, he would have actually died. She said that they had always been like this, wishing death upon each other, and she couldn't even believe if he was serious. Then suddenly, she remembered when Yunsu had come to save her from Leo and had cried seeing her in pain. She confessed that she never thought she would be able to trust anyone in her life, but he was the first person. Yunsu was shocked, but Chaya continued, saying it had been very hard for her to give Gurim's location to Leo, but someone had died before her eyes, and she just couldn't take it anymore. She cried, saying that they could never have a normal relationship and that if she liked him, it would make her hate herself, that she was going to fall apart. Yunsu told her that it didn't matter and that he didn't care how ruined she was. He was about to kiss her, but stopped when he saw her tears. He asked how she could ask him to erase her memories while saying such things, telling her that she was even crueler than him. Chaya replied that if that was true, then it was a good thing, as this was her last and best revenge. In the next scene, Chaya was at the Korean airport, her expression blank and thoughtless. Meanwhile, Gurim held Yunsu's button in his hand, looking both annoyed and determined.